Thank you so much for attending. Super stoked about this. I want to talk a little bit about the free labs that we have for this course. So the first thing is I have this link right here. If you go over to resources, it should be in there. You should be able to see this particular link available to you all. If I can get a confirmation of thumbs up on Discord or in Zoom. I prefer Discord, just saying, yes, you can see the link. Yes, you were able to gain access to the link. I'm going to walk through getting you all set up in MetaCTF with Roman and all the awesomeness that we have there. Now, whenever you go to this link, it's going to give you like, what is the link and the registration for MetaCTF? You're going to need to register for MetaCTF. You're going to put in an email address. And yes, you're going to have to put in an email address that we can actually send you emails to. That'll be super duper helpful. So please keep that in mind. But you're going to log in. And once you log in, you're going to see at the top of your screen, there's something called Cloud Labs. Once you select Cloud Labs, it's going to ask you for a class code. A number of our classes have labs that we're moving and migrating into Cloud Labs, and every class will have its own class code. Once you input the class code, in this class it's SCS-4CE8, it will enable the labs for this class. We have 2 virtual machines for this class set up. We have a Windows Server 2022 and a Kali instance available for you in this class. And you have 16 hours where you can run this lab and you can do what you need to do. You're going to need to remember to shut off your virtual machines in between labs because it burns credits while they're running. It takes money to run these labs. Just giving you a heads up, we're making them available for free to everybody that is in the SOC Core Skills class, and that costs us. So we need to make sure that you guys aren't just leaving it running all the time. I know some people get frustrated. They're like, oh, geez, I had to buy some more credits. And if you just left it up and running, then I would have to pay, like, I already pay thousands of dollars for this class, but we would have to pay many thousands of dollars for this class. So we give you 16 hours of credits. Now, the question was, if I want to buy more credits, how much does that cost? And go over here. I have 14 credits left for me. 10 credits is $5, 25 is $10, 75 credits for $25. So it's not that expensive, but it does add up, okay? It does add up. So please don't forget that. Once you're at this point, somebody asked what I'm drinking. I am drinking low sodium V8. It's one of my hopes in life, one of my dreams in life, that I get sponsored by low sodium V8 because I think that that would be hilarious. I would put a patch on my shoulder. It's never going to happen, ever. But when you're in the labs, you're going to click on View Manage Lab, and now you're going to see your labs. You can start each individual VM. Don't do it that way because the VMs are very much correlated with each other. The best way to start your labs is to click Start Lab. When you click Start Lab, it's going to take about 130 seconds for it to spin up both of the virtual machines, the Kali VM and the Windows VM that we will be using for this class. Just giving it a moment. It's going to pop up here. It's going to say setting up, and then it's going to say 110 seconds. I'm going to let that cook for a little while in the background because we have a lot of people starting up labs right now. All right, and we're going to jump back into our slides. We're going to do the Julia Childs thing. We just put the labs in the oven, and we're going to let those cook while we talk about getting started with BHIS as a SOC analyst as well. Well, we need the Kali VM? No, you don't. Everything you need is in the cloud. You can do this class on a brand new MacBook Pro. You can do it on a Windows system. You can do it on the junk computer system around the corner. You can do it in a library because the libraries allow people to go anywhere they want to on the internet. Woohoo! All right. But it's available for everybody. We've got that set up and we'll be watching that. I have 104 seconds for my VM to start, which is great. Question was, I only have 4.55 credits and I think they're from the last class. Just go buy more credits. Just go purchase more credits for $5 or $10 and you should be able to get the credits you need as well. All right, so there we go. So in this class, we're going to be covering a number of things that I don't cover in my Intro to Security class that we do as the follow-on for this particular course out there as well. A A lot of those classes, we don't cover intro to Windows. We don't cover intro to Linux. We don't cover TCP/IP. We don't cover basics and fundamentals and the core things you need to work and learn at the BHIS SOC. Yeah, we don't cover those things because they're foundational and we kind of expect people to understand those things. However, we're going to make Grumpy Cat mad today because Grumpy Cat is like, how about no? But I'm going to tell you, actually, yes, Grumpy Cat, we're going to be covering these particular topics to get people started with the core understanding they need to be able to go deeper in these topics. We're going to give you a number of different resources from Professor Messier. We're going to be talking about John Hammond and all these awesome places. But the problem is, whenever you're talking to a lot of the YouTubers that are out there, you're dealing with a lot of people that have been doing this for a while. They're out there flying and doing amazing, cool filters. And you're like, how do I even learn the basics and fundamentals on how to just get started with these tools? So in this class, we're going to be hitting those basic fundamental concepts. We're going to be talking about the Windows command line. We're going to be talking about Linux. We're going to be talking about the basics and fundamentals of TCP/IP. I'm also going to rant a little bit, just a scooch, about how one should never ever learn or force other people to learn the OSI model ever. We're going to be learning the TCP/IP model because that's the way internet and packets work. OSI model doesn't work that way at all because it's garbage, and I'll get into that more. But yes, there is going to be an OSI rant just coming around again because this one's for the people of the sun. We're going to cover these basics and fundamentals. The question Zeph just asked, will the slides be available? Absolutely, Zeph. Go look over in resources, SOC core skills. SOC core skills. Somebody asked, where is the class code? Going back to the Cloud Lab instructions, it says enter the code SCS4CE8 into the class code field. It's right there and ready to go. All right. And I have my VMs up and running now. Let's take a look at my VMs. So once I am set up in this VM, we have Cloud Labs set up, and everybody can use Cloud Labs. You can play with the VMs. The labs don't correlate to the VMs. We need to kill the instructions for running the VMs because everything runs in Cloud Labs now. Once you have this running, you connect to the Windows VM and only the Windows VM via RDP. There we go. I'm going to go ahead and allow this to access my clipboard because we're going to be copying and pasting back and forth. And we need that. Chrome, so needy. I'm not going to make you my default browser. I'm sorry. We just don't have that relationship, Chrome. I can't make that commitment. That type of long-term commitment to a browser. Just can't. Just can't. All right. So once I am in the server 2022, to gain access to Kali, you select the little Kali icon. And it's going to pop up a little warning. It's going to say you accept the key fingerprint. You're going to say, yes, I do accept the key fingerprint, at which point you now have a Kali instance. It may require you run PowerShell. To do that, you click the little PowerShell icon, which takes a little while to start. It may require a command prompt. You have a command prompt there as well. So everything you need to do every single lab is in MetaCTF, and it is in the cloud. It's in the cloud, man. Yeah, it is. Absolutely. So all of this is ready to rock and or roll. So just keep that in mind. I'm going to leave this running here. We'll be coming back here in just a little bit as we go through the slides. But the VMs, they run super easy peasy, lemon squeezy in the cloud with MetaCTF. So when we talk about Windows command line, we're going to be discussing the Windows command line in terms of incident response. We're going to be looking at malware. We're going to be looking at Windows command line through that lens. When we talk about Linux command line, we're going to be talking about the Linux command line through malware, understanding how a hack looks and how are the different tools and the different places to look at a Linux system when we're dealing with malware. When we look at TCP/IP, we're going to be looking at it through the terms of malware. We're going to be, how do we detect malware whenever we're looking at packets on the wire out there? So all of this is going to be through the InfoSec lens. Otherwise, this would be a class where I just sit around and I talk about man pages all day long. And the last thing that anybody ever wants is a class that's nothing but a whole bunch of filler slides that are the equivalent of the man pages where the instructor reads that to you. Wouldn't that suck? Yeah, we don't want to be doing that at all. Also, this class has overlap with the other pay what you can classes that I provide at BHIS. So when we're looking at this class, there's a little bit of overlap in the intro to security class that we offer. So that class is going to be the next in the series. I do a trifecta of 3 classes. We do intro to SOC core skills, we move intro to security, and then we move into cyber deception. How in the hell did this all happen? Well, honestly, the way that this all went down is the class that I originally wrote and I started offering at Wild West Hacking Fest was Intro to Cyber Deception. That was the first class that I wrote for Anti-Siphon. Then I had a bunch of students that were basically like, yo, I don't understand a lot of the basics and fundamentals of securing a system, and you're talking about honeypots and deception? You need to have a security class. So I created the Intro to Security class as an absolute core basic class that is all killer, no filler. And that is completely based on Black Hills Information Security and our penetration tests that we do on a regular basis. I went through all of the different pen tests that we did. I didn't do it. I used a fleet of flying monkeys and interns to do it for me. But we went through and we looked at our pen test reports. We said, what were all the techniques that would have shut down this particular attack? And we came up with 10 different things that you can do to shut down an attacker breaking into your environment. We added in backups and we had 11, and we created something called the atomic controls. Taking the CIS controls, distilling it down to triage mode, go into those things. And we created our intro to security class. But I still had people that were like, dude, I went into the intro to security class, just dropped me straight into the command prompt, completely lost. Just like, holy crap, I went to this dark place. And, you know, as Nietzsche said, the more you stare into the darkness, the more it stares into you. And that is absolutely 100% true, especially when you're looking at the Windows and Linux command prompts. A lot of people, when they pop up, they like drop underneath their desk and they start sucking their thumb and they're like, the dark place, the dark place. Whenever I go into the place that I fear to go, I see John Strand staring back at me. Ah, spice must flow. So what we want to do is get people past that. We want people to be okay with the dark place. We want people to embrace the command prompt. And that's why this class was created. We get into the command prompt for Windows, command prompt for Linux, and looking at packets so that when you're applying for a job, you have those core fundamental skills that are required for you to be successful at that job. Now, for these classes, there's actually overlap. Right? There's some of the labs and some of the topics that overlap. Over time, there will be more separation, but there's definitely overlap because even though these classes feed into each other, they're designed to also work in such a way where they can stand on their own 2 feet. All right? I hope you're having fun. Now, one of the things that comes up all the time, and I don't know, it came up, I don't know, like 10 times. Before this class even started, we have people that are asking, how do I get started? Right? And this class and the next class is absolutely set up to get you to that next step. By the way, Bulldog said, if you want to be a lead hacker, all you have to do is netstat. No, I believe it's Tracer T, as Next Gen Hacker 101 taught us years and years and years ago. If somebody can get us a link to that. Yes, this class just absolutely feeds my ADHD. So we created this class, the Intro to Security class, as kind of the on-ramp to the beginning of the 5-year plan. How do you get started in InfoSec? Now, this webcast, which we'll get a link for you all here in just a few moments, is designed for a college student that's taking college classes. It's designed for somebody that's already working in IT, and they have a good plan to try to get into computer security and get started and start kicking ass out there. Now, this 5-year plan, you can take 5 years. If you're a college student, you're a freshman, because we were only freshmen, you can do it that way. That's fine. You can also compress it. I have had people do everything in the 5-year InfoSec path, drop it down to 3 months, because that's all that they did. That's it. So if you want to kind of see where this class fits, this class is about year 1 to year 2 of the 5-year plan. When we're looking at it, really focusing on the command line, working on, you know, how packets work and how operating systems work, things like that, really meant to kind of jumpstart that 5-year path, getting you set up in it as well. All right, so go check out that video It's an hour dedicated to that. And by the by, I don't know if we have Jason or Deb or Zach still here. We got Yuri. Yuri's awesome. A round of applause for Yuri. Yuri should put a little bit about himself. Feel free to lie, Yuri. I think that works. I think that works. I don't know if we have Jason here, but Jason has a series of webcasts out there, how to job hunt like a hacker. And I'm going to tell you all, you're job hunting wrong. It's not your fault. It's totally not your fault. Don't want to blame anybody, but you're job hunting incorrectly. Okay. And Jason Blanchard's webcast, How to Job Hunt Like a Hacker, is absolutely showing you the right way to job hunt in this economy. Because you see these people all the time, and it's true. They say that there's 750,000, there's a million jobs out there. And I've got a question for you all. If there's a million jobs, then all of you would be employed, right? How many of you are trying to find a job and it's an absolute pain in the ass and you're just struggling. You keep seeing this millions of jobs and you're like, why am I not getting a job? Why am I not getting employed? How come this is like that? All right. So here's the deal, y'all. There are literally that many jobs open, but organizations are in a position where they're being very cautious about who they hire. Okay. Means they're willing to wait. You have the lack of experience, Tiff. Absolutely. Exodus, me. By the way, welcome back, Exodus. We have people out on YouTube, because you can watch this class on the YouTubes. People on YouTube, please say hi to the people on Discord. All right. The point of giving up is rational. All right. No, 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 Turavin, I don't believe that that's true. I don't believe that that's true. The who wants a job and let's back up. Okay. Let's back up. Back up, back up. What you gonna do now? Sorry, referencing Limp Bizkit. God damn, where the hell did that come from? Oh, that's just weird. But the reason why there's this huge discrepancy is all of these companies are willing to wait to get somebody in that job that is going to come in and kick ass. You have the requirements are like 3 to 5 years. They want you to understand all of these different things. They love to do all of this. People like love the flow of consciousness. I base it on James Joyce, Portrait of Artist as a Young Man, which is weird, but whatever. But when you're looking at what's going on in the industry, people are willing to wait for people that have the right skills. Now, having certifications doesn't mean that you have the skills. Having degrees doesn't mean you have the skills. So you have to change the way that you job hunt to basically mold your resume to match the job that you're going after. Okay? Because far too many people, they look at it like, look at my resume and tell me what's wrong with it. It's like, well, you're using Arial font, Billy. Everybody knows that morons use Arial. If you really want to be seen, you're going to be using standard ASCII font. So you look like a real hacker. What the hell, right? We give people all these resume ideas and it's just absolute, complete. I'm trying to swear less, but you know what? I'm just going to say it. It's dog shit. Or dog poo poo, as we were, right? So when you're looking at trying to get a job, what's really, really super cool is Jason shows you how to take a job posting and match your resume to match that job posting. All right. You want to match your resume to the job that you are going after because they're looking for certain skills. They're looking for certain things. The more you match to what they're looking for, the more likely you are to actually get that interview in there as well. All of these skills, every single one of these skills, everyone, directly applies in this class that we're going to teach, will directly apply to any information security job that you go after. If you can truly understand Windows command line from the purposes of hunting for malware, Linux command line hunting for malware, understand packets, you understand at a fundamental level what tools are actually telling you. Okay? Now, some people come into this class and they're like, look, we just want a class that's going to tell us how to use an EDR. We want to learn how to use SentinelOne. We want to use CrowdStrike. We want to use whatever tool du jour that's out there that you want to use. And your life is going to suck. It's going to suck because odds are not every single place that you're trying to get a job at is going to use those specific tools. But you're also going to be limited to just the tool set and the skill set that that tool provides. And as soon as somebody pulls you off of that tool, you're absolutely helpless and you have to be retrained. If you know how to actually go and look at packets, if you know how to look at a Windows system, if you know how to look at a Linux computer system, rather than just saying, oh, well, Sentinel-1 told me it's hacked, but you understand how to hunt for that malware, hunt for that attack at a fundamental level, you're going to kick ass in any tool that you use. Okay. So when we're doing all of this, we're going to be focusing on you're compromised, now what? And we will be giving you more information. And Jason, will you be willing to do a quick job hunting half-hour session for people?
Yeah, we did a quick 10-minute crash course right before you joined. And
Nice.
then I can come in tomorrow and do like a more in-depth version.
Nice. And I'll do my job hunting thing where I correlate back the CIS guides back to how we, like if there's technologies that are listed, how do we find out about those technologies so we can add it into our resume? So I'll do that today. Does that sound good?
Sounds good. So I'll
Awesome.
be back
All right.
for
So
tomorrow.
we're going to tag team it. We're going to get it there.
Mhm.
So there's a number of people that have gotten their jobs in SOC and in information security specifically because they have been through this course. All right. And when we're talking about this course and we're talking about how, the skill sets that you're getting from this course, we are literally giving you training that is the equivalent of $10,000 training that you can get from like Black Hat or other places or like, I don't know, there's places out there that charge that much. So there are places that do that, and we are absolutely going to give you that level of training, and it's going to be tied back to what we see every single day. So let's jump in. You're compromised. Now what? First steps are really tough. It is really, really, really tough for people to make a first step once a breach has happened. And as I said, I need to set up a lens through which to set up this class from a pedagogical perspective. Because if I just go through and do like, oh, well, we're going to do the man pages for Windows for the next 15 slides, or we're going to do the man pages for various Linux tools for the next 15 slides. I could take this 2-day class and I could make it like a 6-day class. I could do that relatively easily, but that doesn't actually put context around it. So instead, what we're going to do is we're going to go through and we're going to look at everything through the exciting lens of you're compromised. There's malware on your system. How do you find it with memory analysis? There's malware on your system. How do you find it on a Windows system? There's malware on your system. How do you find it from a network perspective? So we have that kind of edge of the pool that you can hang on to so you feel comfortable starting to swim in the ocean of information security that's out there. And the reason why people are so panicked about this is they're terrified about making mistakes, right? They're afraid that they're going to interfere with the evidence. They're afraid that they're going to screw up. They're afraid that they're going to do all of those different things that are going to make a mistake and they're going to get in trouble. And really, in the world today, one of the most horrible things in IT is we judge people on their failures. How many of you have ever seen that? There's some jokes that are pretty dirty, but you can do everything right in IT. But if you bring down the environment once, what do you get judged on? Yeah, you get judged on your failures, right? They're like, Dr. Splot was amazing. He did all kinds of amazing things. But you remember the other day where he shut down the CEO's notebook computer? That could be 3 years ago, and they'll still bring that stuff up. Dr. Split, I'm amazing. I brought donuts. Donuts are the way to go, right? But we see that. And usually the safest action in IT in many organizations is no action at all. And I think that that's an incredible mistake, right? We move into paralysis and we try to go through and try to say, okay, you're not going to do anything because if I don't do anything, then it's not my fault. And then I get an opportunity to blame other people, right? So you don't keep moving, you don't have a plan, you don't move forward, you don't get blamed for anything. It becomes a state machine. So what we want to do is we want to equip you with the first few steps. Like if we're talking about chess, what are the opening moves in chess? By the way, if you'd like to learn chess, go check out Gotham Chess. Phenomenal YouTube channel. Absolutely great. Gotham is great. Anna Kremling is great, especially when her mom's on. So great, great, great stuff out there in chess. But I digress with the chess stuff that we're talking about. But we're going to talk about this from the perspective of the first opening steps. Also, Horiku's has a great channel as well. All right, so you have these opening moves that you're going to do that'll put you into a safe position, and they're not going to completely screw up the entire incident that you're working as well. So we want to cover these basic steps out there. HK is all over it. By the way, HK, you've got to shoot me an email at some point. All right. So when we're talking incident response, we get into this problem with incident response where it is so convoluted and so crazy messed up that many organizations want to have this full process flow diagram, right? So when we get into an incident, we're going to come up with a decision tree, we're going to come up with these flow diagrams, and we're going to do all these different things. Like if you think the Windows system is compromised, go to this box. Based on the information in this box, you're going to do these things, and then you're going to do these things. And you come up with this flow diagram, and flow diagrams get so complicated in trying to work through an IR engagement that it looks like this slide. Now, years ago when I was at Northrop Grumman, we had a gentleman that came in from IBM, and he was talking about federated identity and access management through their pluggable authentication modules and how it integrated with everything. And a slide popped up like this one. He looked at the slide and said, I think the slide's pretty much self-explanatory, and just skipped right over it, right? It wasn't self-explanatory. It was horrible. Flowcharts are horrible. The only way that flowcharts are good is when you're talking about communication paths and things like that. The only flowchart I have ever seen, got trouble typing, is this one, right? If we're looking at the flowchart of, is it your fault? This has been around forever. It says, does the thing work, right? Yes or no. If it does work, don't mess with it. No problem. If it doesn't work, did you mess with it? Yes. No. Will you be blamed? Can you shut it down? This is the only flow chart, and it's a little bit dirty with some of the language, y'all, but this is the only flow chart that I've ever seen that is actually real. Like this is the way all IT runs, right? No swear jars, Brian, for the flow chart. No swear jar. By the way, what are we at for money? Every time I swear, I give $25 or $15 to the EFF because I'm trying to do better. I'm trying to do better, y'all. But sometimes it's hard. Like whenever I talk about the goddamn OSI model, that's $15. Someone can keep that. It's worth it. It's worth it. We'll come back to that. All right. So that's the only flowchart I have ever seen that actually makes sense, right? That is it. That is the only one that makes sense out there. Instead of looking at flowcharts, what I really want you to do is I want you to focus on Legos. All right. How many of you remember the Lego movie? I get a little bit kind of freaked out with some of my references because I'm old. And like the Lego movie for me came out last year, right? Everything is awesome. All right. So one of the things about the Lego movie that I loved is the Lego movie is set up in such a way that the main character, I think his name is Elliot, anytime he encounters a problem, he can use the Legos around him to create a solution to that problem, right? So when we're looking at how we assess an incident, how we work through that incident, it's much better to look at Lego bricks of functionality than it is to look at it through the lens of here's a flowchart of what we do for each of the different attacks that are out there, because those flowcharts get overly complicated. And as soon as the attacker doesn't act the way you expect them to, it all of a sudden falls apart. DP asked, go to resources, SOC core skills on the left. And that has the link, that has the document, the link to MetaCTF, and it has a link to the lab environment as well. It's over in resources. All right. So the right way, right? We're going to look at this as bricks and blocks of functionality. Okay. We're going to look at it as categories. Now, let me explain these categories, right? When we're working on defending an organization, we need to have documented procedures on how to do each of these things. I'm going to share a link to a game here in just a couple of seconds. Endpoint analysis. Do we have the skills to do endpoint analysis for Linux and Windows? This class has those labs to get you started with basics and fundamentals of Linux and Windows level analysis. We look at NetFlow and Zeek analysis, right? We have a lab in this class. We're going to talk about how we deal with network packet analysis to detect malware. User entity behavioral analytics. We have a lab that's going to talk about tools like Deep Blue CLI and how that represents looking at logs in a UEBA type like set with it as well. Endpoint security protection analysis. We have a lab. We're going to be using Velociraptor, where we can look at the malware on a system. We're going to look at how we can do this across multiple computers. Server analysis. I'm going to talk more about that when we get there. We'll talk about web log analysis and what types of logs we should be looking for and how the CIS guides work. And then internal segmentation. I'll talk about network architecture. And then crisis management, we're going to thread an understanding of how to use these different core skills to basically deal with any of the incidents that you would be working. Now, would you like an incident response card game that teaches you how to use these with different attacks? How many of you would like that? How many of you would like a card game based around all of this? Some people would, right? How many of you have ADHD and you want it right now? You wish that magically I could just show up to your house and I could give you a card game and the expansions right now for free because you have horrible attention deficit disorder and you're burnt out by social media. Excellent. Let's do this. So we have this game, play.backdoorsandbreaches.com. The entire game is available for free online. All right. All of it is available. And in this game, whenever you play it online, you can play the core, you can do the expansion, cloud security if you want to learn cloud. Huntress, Red Canary, Den Secure, and Trimark all worked with us to create expansion packs as well. So if you click on any of these, it creates the incident response tabletop game. Now, Jason and the team will give you a link on how to play this, but usually the way it's played is one person creates the incident and they're the incident master. And you generate an initial attack and compromise, external cloud access, and internal password spray for lateral movement, C2 and exfil Windows bits service, and then persistence, new user added to the computer, right? So they create this particular incident, and it's up to your team to flip those cards over by doing these blue cards down below. So we have a link on how to play this. It's all available for free online. You can actually get the physical deck at the Spearfish General Store as well. So please go check that out. It's available. But this class is going to help you look at incident response through this lens on how you have these Lego bricks of functionality, where you're going to learn the skills for endpoint analysis. You're going to learn the skills for NetFlow and Zeek analysis, UEBA, log analysis, endpoint protection analysis, server analysis, so you can apply it with any of the incidents that you work. And this is absolutely a skill that all of you should have. That is absolutely something that you should be working through and with as we go. All right. Now, as we're working through this class, one of the things I want you all to do is to not panic. All right. We're going to be going through a whole bunch of technical things. And some of these technical things are going to be very, very, very weird. All right. It's going to be awkward. It's going to be strange. It's new stuff for a lot of you. And really, I want you all to not panic. Don't freak out. I really look at the universe, call it God, call it fate, call it whatever. But whenever you start panicking and you start freaking out, something in the universe goes out of its way to make your life more difficult. I don't know why. I don't know what it is. Could it be Satan? Possibly. Once again, going with ancient 90s references. Could be. I don't know. Right? But the more that you panic, the more you freak out, the more things stop working for you. And the more your brain shuts down. There's been a lot of very interesting studies about stress and how it impacts people's ability to logic and function. If you look at people in underprivileged neighborhoods that are very, very, very poor, the kids don't learn. And it's not that they're idiots. It's not that they're inferior or whatever. It's just they're stressed out and they're in fight or flight mode and they're trying to deal with that stress. And the more you get stressed out, the more the world seems to turn against you again and again and again. Surviving is hard, right? So I don't want you to panic. If things don't work, you need to embrace the suck and treat it as a kind of a learning opportunity. Because the more that you learn is usually going to come from failures rather than things working. Most of the time, like the crazy crap that I know is usually because I failed again and again and again and again, and I kept going. And I didn't look at the failures as, oh, I'm an idiot, I'm a moron, I suck at this, I should just give up. What's on Netflix? What's Instagram telling me? Can I please find an app that makes me hate my fellow Americans as much as possible? Like, I'll do that instead, right? Because that's easy, right? Just give it to me direct, internet. So instead of looking at the failures as something to panic at, I want you all to look at it, and I want you all to look at it as you have a posse. There's over, I think, 3,000 people on the anti-siphon server alone, active right now. You have a number of people in this class that are absolutely focusing on getting through this course. And also, just as a heads up, a lot of the people that are on Discord have been through this class before. I like the Muhammad Ali quote. I really like the Mike Tyson quote. He said, to be successful, you have to do the things you hate like you love it. That's great, right? So we're going to focus. We're going to go through. We're not going to freak out. You have people that are here to help you. I am here to help you as well. Now, some training organizations that are pretty damn cool, they have a motto of try harder. I think that that's a good motto. That makes a lot of sense if you have a basic core fundamental knowledge and understanding this. Dr. Splott, absolutely. Get out of here. It's all recorded. All of the recordings will be in resources, SOC skills, right? So you got it all. Oh my God. That's a great meme. Working in cybersecurity is not stressful at all. So we're not going to freak out. We're going to ask questions. We're not going to be afraid to ask questions. Okay. We're going to have people here that are sharing their knowledge. We're going to have people here that are brand new, and we're going to respect both ends of the spectrum. In this company, BHIS and anti-siphon security training, we have weird people, like, or they're not weird. They're very, very like normal people, like Deb. Deb's whole job, I don't know if you met Deb this morning or not, her whole job is director of kindness. And she's here to make sure that we are kind and we are nice to each other. So there's bullshit that I don't tolerate. If somebody asks a basic question, do not get mad. Do not put those people down. Just don't. I'm not going to deal with that. I'm not. We have people that get a little bit frustrated. And by the way, I need you guys keeping track of the amount that I owe for the Electronic Frontier Foundation, please. Somebody asks a question, and it's a noob question, or it seems like a basic question, or it seems like a question that John already answered. Do not get snarky, because we are throwing a tremendous amount of information out there at a very high rate of speed. It's very common for people to miss things, and that's okay. Right? So instead of try harder, we're going to try to do let me help you. I do get a little snarky from time to time if people get snarky with me. If you're like, oh, this wasn't covered, blah, 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 and it was, probably going to have a little bit of snark. I'm going to try not to. I'm going to try to be better. I'm going to try to be better. But please, let's all start with the starting assumption that everyone here is built around to help. I love that quote, William. Hey, BHIS people, we got a t-shirt. Instead of try harder, we're going to do try better. I love that. We're going to turn that into a shirt. Try better. And that means helping each other out. How can we help you out? All right. So we're going to get into these topics, and some of these topics they're going to suck. It's going to hurt. We're going to drop you into some things, and you're just going to be like, I have no idea. One of the things that's cool about the labs is you can keep coming back to the labs, and you can do them as many times as you want. You want to drill on those labs as much as you can, so it becomes route. It becomes second nature for you. And trust me, when you get into the job hunting market space, it's going to become even more important out there as well. Getting likely spammer messages. Let me see what we got here. What is the message? I don't know. That wasn't a spam message from Penzo. It's weird. We'll look into it. All right. So different drink count. It's still only two. The only things I have are low sodium V8 and pure leaf, no sugar tea. That's it. That's all I got. Yeah, I think, okay, you're looking into it? Awesome. So, all right, let's get started. We're going to start with TCP/IP because it's a very good place to start. All right, I've got some time. I'm going to do this rant. How many of you here have learned the OSI model? Please do not throw stale pizza away. Those things. How many of you, as much as you learn it, you kind of go, huh, that seems really weird to me. I don't know. I don't understand how this relates to the real world. All right. So let's stop learning the OSI model and let's stop teaching it. So I'm going to share with you all an article that everybody should read, and it's by IEEE. It's called OSI Model, the Internet That Wasn't. Okay. And what the basic genesis of this is basically the OSI model was never a model that became something that was used. Okay. So if you read this article, you're going to find out a few things. First thing is the OSI model was the first inception of the OSI model was in the 60s. All right. Number one. So when they were talking about the 7-layer stack and how these different things worked and how they set it up, it was purely theoretical and there was no switching networks that existed at that time. So they developed this model, and one of my favorite quotes in this article, and I don't know where it is, it basically said it was a model that was created from consensus, which pretty much means that it was doomed from the start. All right. So when you're going through and you're reading this article, and you absolutely should read this article, right? You should go through this article because it goes through this history. And like you have things like OSI is a beautiful dream and TCP/IP is living it. And you're going through all of this stuff and you're learning about it. Like I said, it starts with the Berlin Wall going up. That's when they started talking about open systems interconnect, right? Talked about the RAND Corporation, National Physics Laboratory, packet switching, breaking things down, ARPANET, and all of these things. But the point that you get from reading this is the OSI model was never implemented. It was never really implemented. The Stevens 4-layer model is what, or the TCPI model is what normally people call it, is what actually was implemented. In fact, these are not even like, some people like to argue, well, the OSI is a model and TCP/IP. No, it's not. It was never implemented. In fact, it was actually known as a separate and distinct model. And I want to say in 1984, the United States government was very, very, very frustrated that nobody was using the OSI model. And one of them put out an RFC that said you are to use OSI when you're developing your models and you're not supposed to use TCP/IP. Even with all of that, TCP/IP actually still won. All right. It's still won in how this actually worked. So when you're looking at how these models work, the OSI model doesn't relate at all to anything that we are going to be talking about, period. An example would be write me a filter in TCP/IP that'll only bring me out the presentation layer data for applications. It's not a thing. You know, I know it's not a thing. Because when they were developing the OSI model, as I said, the OSI model was created by consensus. All right. It was created by consensus. And that meant that there was lots and lots of like compromises that were made. Okay. And years and years and years ago, I think it was in the late 70s, it might have been the early 80s, there was a German company that referred to their application layer as the presentation layer. Because they were like, this is where the data for the application gets presented to the user. There was a huge debate about whether or not it was a presentation layer or an application layer. They were arguing about what to call the application layer. And rather than settle this debate, they simply created two separate layers. They named one presentation, they named one application, when in fact they both did the exact same functions as the application layer. But the compromise was to have two separate layers with two separate names. So the German company didn't have to change its documentation and what it was saying, and American organizations could continue with the application layer. So really, application layer and the presentation layer are kind of the same thing because it was by an argument on how that would actually be settled, right? So when you're looking at this article, and I strongly encourage you to read this article, because in here, even the United States government looked at TCP/IP and OSI as separate models. In 1985, the National Research Council recommendation was to transition away from TCP/IP towards the OSI model. The Department of Commerce issued a mandate in 1988 that the OSI model be used on all computers purchased with the United States government after 1990. They were separate models. It's not a matter of a theoretical model and TCP/IP is the application of that model. They are separate models. And even with all of this, TCP/IP won. Okay. So I want to show you a map of like how lots of people try to like stack this up. They like to show this right here that says this is how the OSI model stacks up with the TCP/IP model. And to be honest, it does match. If you're looking at the network access layer, that's data link in the physical layer. That is true. Network layer is the network layer. Transport layer is the transport layer. But after that, after you get past the transport layer, TCP/IP just rolls all of that crap into the application layer. And that's the way packets work. Okay, that's the way packets actually work. You don't look at people and say session layer, presentation layer, application layer, all of those different things. It just doesn't work that way. It works the way it is on the right. Okay, but people try to shoehorn this garbage all the time and try to train people on how to do it. And you have students that are sitting and trying to figure out how the application layer, how that transition works from the presentation layer and the session layer, encapsulation, de-encapsulation, which does still happen in TCP/IP, especially with VPNs and things of that nature, how that all works. And it's much easier to think about the TCP/IP model. Now, it is my hope that before I die and I shuffle off this mortal coil and I disappear off into the ether, that I have killed the OSI model being taught, because people are constantly fighting that and trying to understand how packets work, and they're working with a flawed model, which screws with their ability to truly understand what is going on. So we're going to teach the TCP/IP model because this is how it works. Damn it. There's another $15. What are we at? Am I at like $100 today already for the EFF? Chad got the great point. Here's a PCAP. Show me the presentation layer. Where is it? Go. All applications are different. All applications are fundamentally different in the way that they're structured. DNS is not the same as HTTP. DNS over HTTP is a very different thing. How does it work with the OSI model? Whenever you have DNS over HTTP and you got this encapsulated protocol within this other protocol, but it's not an actual DNS protocol because it's not actually doing recursion the way that it's supposed to be doing. It's actually a completely separate protocol because DHCP over DNS over HTTP is different than just straight DNS. Oh my God, it gets so crazy. Also, when you're looking at those protocols and you have handoffs in DNS and it goes to a root name server and then it hands it down to another primary DNS server and it's doing recursion and it's doing these lookups and it's doing referrals, how does the OSI model actually handle that? Doesn't. All right, so let's get into it. So the IP header. When we have an envelope, all right, we're going to talk about packets right now because this looks spooky. Right? Whenever I show the IP header, we're looking at all these different things. It looks a little scary. I'm not gonna lie. It's kind of like, oh wow, that's scary. That's weird, huh? What's going on there? So whenever I send a letter to somebody, what is on that letter to get it routed properly? Anyone? What would I see on that letter? And this would, let's say I'm sending a letter internationally. Because my baby send me a letter. You got address, city, country. All right. You got address, city, and country. Postal codes, right? So you have those addresses. So whenever we're looking at a packet of data, I literally want you to think about it in terms of, let's look at it in terms of an actual envelope. Okay. An actual envelope. And on that envelope, we have the source and the destination, right? Neighbor, awesome, awesome. First name, last name is the recipient, street name, apartment name, city and state, and the country. And it kind of works from that course thing, like country to zip code to city to street to address, right? It kind of works its way down. And it turns out whenever you're looking at packets and you're looking at how those packets actually work, it uses something very similar to the way letters would be sent. At some point, I'm going to need to come up with a completely different way of looking at this because I'm going to mention letters and mail, and people are going to be like, what the hell is that, right? even though I'm sure we'll still get mail, because how are we going to get junk mail, right? We still need to have junk mail and, amazing loan options that are available just to you. All right. So when we're looking at the internet protocol, we have these like kind of headers that we put on top of a packet, and then we have the data associated with that packet, and that would be the application layer, right? So if we're looking at this, we have our Ethernet frame and our physical frame. These are like what we're going to be looking at is like frames, layers 1 in the TCP/IP model. Okay, so this would be layer 1, and that's directly related to how TCP/IP actually works, right? So if we're looking at this over here, we have the network access layer right here, and we can actually drill into that. Where did my lab go? It's right here. We can actually see that we have that MAC address, right? We have the OSI model isn't really, I mean, it's present at this particular level, but we're looking at it at the network access level, and we're seeing MAC address. What the hell is a MAC address? Ooh. So every single device on the face of the planet has something called a media access control address, right? Media access control. Your phone, your my watch has a MAC address. Absolutely, because it is capable of joining Wi-Fi. My notebook computer has a MAC address. What else has a MAC address here? Believe it or not, my remote for my TV has a MAC address. It is a globally unique identifier that specifically identifies that device, and no other system on the face of the planet should have that MAC address. Asterisks, hackers can totally screw with all of this. You can change your MAC address to be anything you want. Talk about that more here in just a little bit. But every single thing, when it rolls off the assembly line, it gets a media access control address. It gets a MAC address to identify it. Why? Well, the reason why is that number, that it's a long number. Like if you look at this, it's C4 AD 34 D3 CC 33, right? That is the MAC address. And notice it has numbers and letters. That's because we're going to be using, anybody ever seen The Martian? What did the Martian use to communicate with people? Does anybody remember? He couldn't use audio, so he had to communicate. And what was he using? He was using hex. He was using hexadecimal. He's using hex. And that's using base 8, base 16, and instead of base 10. And we're base 10 people. So that is a hexadecimal number, but it goes to 16. Like Spinal Tap. It's like, well, this amp goes to 11. When we're talking about these numbers, we go to 16. Let's talk about base numbers for a couple of seconds, because I think that that's somewhat important. Why are we base 10? Why are humans base 10? Anyone? Why do we tend to look at everything in clumps of 10? Our fingers. Because we have 10 fingers, or at least most of us do. I swear to God, in middle school, I had a shop teacher that totally was missing fingers from table saw accidents. It's just like, just living the dream, man. You're living the meme, right? So we had that. We're base 10, all right? What are some other base numbers that human beings use, right? We don't just use base 10. Humans use a lot of different base every single day. Number of us use base 12. Dragon, what do we use in base 12? What is base 12? What is base 12? Time. Also applies to base 24, right? So we have base 12 that we use for hours in the day, right? We have base 60, that is minutes. So if I say it's 4 hours, you know how many minutes that is, roughly in your head. We also have base 7. Base 7 would be days of the week. We have base 365 days, number of days in a year. So we have all of these different numbers that are using clumps of different kind of like number sets to represent different things. Does anybody know where base 24 comes from? Base 12, base 24. Why is there 24 hours or 12 hours a day? This is a theory. Does anybody know? Where does that come from? It's not European. Knuckles, Torvin. Who did Knuckles? This is interesting. Babylon, and before that, ancient Sumerians. Yeah, based on finger joints. Yeah. So when we're looking at base things, all right, we base our number systems on a wide variety of different things, like the number of days it takes for the entire planet to circle the sun. for the sun to go back to the exact same position. The number of knuckles breaks up the number of hours in the day that we have, right? So those are base numbers. So when you're looking at a MAC address, it's set on base 16, right? So you have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. You go up to 16, and then it becomes A, B, C. And A is one set of 16, B is two sets of 16s, C is three sets of 16s. Like imagine you have 16 fingers, right? So when that MAC address is represented, it's represented using that hexadecimal value. And that means those numbers are huge. That means the likelihood of two systems coming off the line with the exact same number for identifying for my phone and my watch is fleetingly small. Does that make sense to everybody? Does that make sense? So we're creating a really, really, really super big number to represent a device. All right. So whenever we're looking at a MAC address, it looks like it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 values. And that's not true. If we're looking at the total number of values, let's say how many MAC addresses are possible. The total number of possible MAC addresses is 281 trillion because a MAC address is a 48-bit number and we have 2 to the power of 48. So the likelihood of you having two media access control addresses with the exact same number, super low. Does that make sense? I feel like we're getting close to 281 trillion devices. Yeah, you know what? It seemed like a good idea at the time. Like we're never going to cross 281 trillion devices out there. Yeah, we can make Mac v6. All right. So if we're looking at our packet, that is one header that goes above our data, right? When we go to the internet protocol, we're actually moving outside of the network. Now, when we're looking at MAC addresses, Ethernet 2 with source destination, that data never leaves the network that I'm on. So whenever my packet traverses from my network here in my shop and it goes out to my edge router, this Ethernet 2 is going to be stripped off and replaced. Okay? It's going to be stripped off and replaced with different MAC addresses. It resets the MAC address header as it goes from device to device, which is a long story. Just know that it changes. But once we get to the internet protocol, it tends to stay a little bit more stable, right? And in here, we say, what version are we using? Predominantly, the two versions of internet protocol that we use are IPv4 and IPv6. And we're going to talk mostly about IPv4. I'll talk about that as well. And then IPv6 side is that in just a little bit. So we say the version number, and it's going to come back and say that it's internet version 4. We got the length and the type of service, which many times is straight IP. What is the total length? See, if I go over here to Wireshark, I can see that the total length of this packet is 41 bytes. All right. I have, what is the version? It's 0100 represented in binary, and it's represented as a 45 in hexadecimal. This is really cool, you all. So when we're looking at that data, it's all ones and zeros, right? Like everybody understands that everything that goes out on a computer is all ones and zeros. Everybody does understand that, right? It's like, or if it's a little bit faster, it's like really, really fast, but it's all set up in ones and zeros. Everybody gets that, right? So it's all ones and zeros, but we abstract that back into hexadecimal, right? And that's over here on the right. So I have the hex value. And if I select that hex value, it's going to tell me over here what that hex value is over here. So if I go into the IP version 4 and I select it, it says 4 is the version, and that's represented by a hexadecimal 45 over here. The header length is 20 bytes. The differentiated service field is, I don't know, 0. It's not set to anything. The total length is 41 bytes. The identification field, we'll talk about ID here in just a couple of seconds. And we'll talk about fragmentation here in a couple of seconds. But there's some things in here that are really, really critical. If you're looking at what is the most important thing, it's the source and destination. The source and destination address, right? The source and destination address is the most important thing in the IP header because it gives us the number where the packets are coming from and where they're going to. All right. So if I look over here, if I look at the source IP address, you can see I highlight it and it's 192.168.99.52. That's where it's coming from. That is the source address on my envelope. And my destination address is 167. Oh, wow, 167. 7197235. That's who it's going to. Now, what is an analogy that I can use for this? Phone numbers, right? So if you're calling somebody on a phone, you will input a number, right? Like, 1-605-348-1477, right? That's the name, that's the number of the grade school that I had growing up, right? And I had to memorize that number because as I was walking to school, they said, if anything happens, give them the school's phone number so they know how to get a hold of your mom and dad. So I memorized that number. Or Jenny, 8675309. It's a number that uniquely represents a phone out in the world, right? And whenever you're switching and you look at like the switch operators, they would switch. It's coming from this number going to this number, and that switching happens automatically. So when I'm calling onto a phone on the internet, I'm not using a phone. I'm allowing a router to automatically route that traffic to the appropriate number. All right. Does that make sense to everybody? That IP address is a number that represents who we're talking to, right? Very cool. So we have source and destination. I'm going to go through some of these things a little bit fast, just to kind of talk about what they are because I don't want to skip over them. This right here, this row 4 with the byte offset identification field is a unique. Well, it doesn't necessarily have to be unique, but back in the day, whenever you were sending packets out on the internet, you had different routers. So a router is basically like a postman that routes the packets to the appropriate system that it goes to. So if you're sending a letter, you're going to send it, it's going to go through multiple postmen and women to get to where it needs to go in post offices. On the internet, you go to your edge router at home, which is just your routing device. And then it goes to your ISP router. And then the ISP router bounces it around to a whole bunch of different routers until it gets to its destination. Let me show you what that looks like. Oops, wrong one. Let's go here. Terminal. Quick to the command line. So if I do trace route to 8.8.8.8, these are all of the routers that my packets are going through. All right. So it goes from 172.16. That's my internal router. Goes to my router. It actually goes to my dish here. Routes it to my router at the telco shed. It then connects out to my IP address, bumps through level 3, goes to Lumen, bounces in Lumen a couple of times. But each one of these are routing hops. And I want you to think of them as like post offices, right? So I'm sending a packet out to the internet and it's being routed to each of these different routers or post offices for it to get to where it wants to go. Now, these last ones, because I'm sending it as a trace route, these post offices are ran by a-holes. They're basically not responding to traceroute traffic. They don't respond to ICMP. They don't respond to traceroute. They don't respond to anything just because they're mean. And they just don't, they're doing it from a security perspective. They're like, well, I'm not going to show you where I'm at here. No, I don't respond to people because I'm so emo on the internet. Look at me. That's a fantastic hat, Brian. A man walks down the street in a hat like that, you know not to mess with that individual. But these are routers on the internet, right? So back in the day, internet was really, really, really sketchy. Like it was like really janky bridges and like network connections and weird network closets. And certain routers were really, really super old and they couldn't handle a certain amount of traffic going through them. So imagine I'm sending you an envelope and that envelope is too big. Okay, the envelope is too big, then it would have to break that envelope up into smaller packets. So when it would do that, it would take the big package, break it into smaller packages, give each of the packages the exact same IP or IP ID or the identification number. It basically says that all of these packets are part of a bigger packet. The ID is like a rug that kind of like makes the whole room hang together, right? It's going to be, I love that rug, man, but it's basically an ID that says all of these packets are to be reassembled together. All right. It's going to be reassembled together. And then we have don't fragment. We have more fragment. That means don't fragment the packets. I have more fragments to come. And then each of those packets would have an offset saying starting from 0 where you would put it to reassemble it together. All right. We don't deal with IPID very much anymore. There's still some bypass techniques that are pretty flippin' cool, where you can take advantage of IPID shenanigans, but we'll deal with that later. So we do want to talk about this guy, this little X right here. Does anybody know what that X is? What X gonna give it to you? It has nothing to do with DMX. Does anybody know what that is? It is, in fact, the evil bit. Which brings me to how the internet works. Because this, Jen, is the internet. All right. So if you want to learn how things work and you're like researching like what is total length, what is fragmentation offset, how does it actually work, there's something called RFCs. All right. And these RFCs are ancient and they explain how the internet actually does work. And this was created by Steve Belvin in 2003. And he came up with this idea that said, hey, you know what? Trying to find real hackers out on the internet, super hard to do. Really, really hard to do. You know what would make it really easy is if we took this reserved bit that they didn't know what to do with and forced all the hackers to set that bit to 1 to denote that their packets were sent with evil intent, that those were evil packets. So we set the evil bit, and then we can filter all the bad packets that the hackers set just by filtering on that bit. All right. Now, this particular RFC is the first instance that I know of mass trolling on the internet. When Steve Belvin released this, there were a whole bunch of IT professionals out in the world that got really worked up. They were like, Steve, this is the dumbest thing I've ever heard. And I'm going to explain why I think that this is stupid because you're wrong and it's on the internet. And I'm just going to explain because you're never going to be able to get the attackers to actually set the evil bit. Why would they do that, Steve? Why would they do that? I just don't think that you understand the fundamentals of human psychology. Ah! Steve got him because what's the date it was released? Kavlin got it. This is the first of the April 1st RFCs. It was a joke. Now, I like to use this, even though it's a joke, RFCs are very real. RFCs determine how packets work. For example, if we were to look at RFC 793, if I go to 793, RFC talks about how the three-way handshake works. The TCP/IP three-way handshake works. If we talk about RFC 1918, it talks about non-routable private addresses to be used for internal networks, for your 192.168, your 172.16, those are your 10 addresses. These are non-routable IP addresses. So we have these RFCs that describe how the internet works, okay? How the internet actually works and how these packets work as well. All right, so we're going to take a quick 10-minute break. Yes, IP over avian transport carrier protocol is in fact trolling. It's another April 1st RFC. I've got a joke on that nerf. When we come back, we're going to take a quick 10-minute break. We're going to come back. We're going to get hydrated. We're going to hit the restroom. We're going to come back and we're going to talk about the TCP IP header, but we're going to talk about packet fragmentation and the IP over avian transport protocol in more detail. So let's get to it. Hit the restroom. Back in 10, everybody. By the way, I'm really, really happy that you all are bringing in some new memes that I've never seen before. Like, let that sink in. It was top shelf, top shelf. So we were talking about packet fragmentation before I jumped off, and I've got a joke about packet fragmentation. I saw a number of you talking about Netflix and how Netflix would take 3 to 5 business days to get you a DVD of a movie. That's a very high bandwidth, like very high latency protocol. But if you're also looking at like IP over carrier pigeon, or the avian transport protocol, you have the exact same types of problems. You can do high bandwidth because you can attach like a USB drive to a pigeon, to a carrier pigeon, and that would be high bandwidth and very high latency as well. But the problem that people don't understand is that whenever you're sending packets over carrier pigeon or the avian transport protocol, you have a lot of the exact same types of problems that you would encounter with standard internet packets being sent. For example, you're very, very susceptible of dropping a packet or two over hunting season. But also, you have a problem. What do you call a pigeon in a blender? Packet fragmentation. Reassembly is very, very difficult on that as well. All right, so let's keep going. So we have the IP header, right? So the IP header, the most important thing the IP header has is it has a number that's like a phone number for a computer. We call that an IP address. So we have an IP address number that allows us to route that traffic on the internet to where it needs to go. Okay. Now, in addition to that tracking of, the actual system that we're communicating to, where are we sending it on that computer system? All right. So let's use an analogy. I'm sending it to, let's say, your house. What are all the different ways that something can get into your house? What are all the different ways? And what are the different things that are allowed to those different pathways into your home, right? You have the front door, right? You have the front door. Humans tend to walk through the front door. You also have a garage, right? Generally, for a house, there would be a garage, and that door or that garage door would be used for cars, right? You have windows where you have, I don't know, like random people coming into your house through the window. But you also would have light that would come in. You have electricity that comes into your house through wires. You have water that comes in through pipes. You have a number of different ways that different things can come into your home. Now, I want you to imagine that there are 65,536 different ways to get into your house times two. And I'll get to that here in just a couple of seconds. And that's how a computer looks at sending something to an IP address. It just doesn't send it to the IP address and like, hey, you figured it out, right? No, it has to send it to a specific way into that computer system. An example would be port 80. Port 80 is generally web traffic. Port 443 is generally encrypted web traffic. 445 is SMB. 2021 are used for like FTP. You have SSH on 22, Telnet on 23. You have Echo charging quote of the day. 8080 is proxy traffic. 8888 is also used for proxy traffic as well. But you have all of these different ports or rooms or ways to get stuff into your house, right? Now, we have to have another header information that tells us what port things are going to be sent to. And for that, we use the TCP header. We have source port and destination port. The reason why we have a source port and we have a destination port is because when we send data to a system on port 80, it responds back to the port it originated from. All right, it responds back to the port it originated from. So let me show you what that actually looks like. I realize sometimes I do this stuff way, way, way too fast. So we're going to start up a little bit of a packet sniffer. I'm going to start up a Kali instance. Ooh, looks like my Kali system went down. That's weird. That's very weird. That's okay. I can do it here too. All right. So I'm going to CD into the tools directory. Oops. There. I know how to type. CD the top level directory. I'm going to CD into intro labs and see, there we go. And I'm going to start up Wireshark listening right here. So we got Wireshark running. So I'm going to try to do netcat listen on ports. Let's do 2222. And then I'm going to open up another command prompt. And I'm going to make a connection to myself. Oh, I need to be in the right directory. We're going to send traffic. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to start this and we're going to do a new capture and we're going to do it on, let's do the loop back. There we go. And then I'm going to start sending traffic back and forth from myself to myself. Okay. So I can send data on port 2222 on my system and you can see the package showing up on the other side. Right. So here you can see this right here. I have the packet that's being sent and received. Let me stop that. There we go. So here I have got, let's go ahead and look at this packet. I think that this is a good one. So you can see that I have a packet where I sent data from myself to myself, all in this packet, all in a netcat listener. All right. All in a netcat listener. What is netcat? What does it do? Well, netcat, whenever I ran it on my computer system, I set up two separate netcat instances. I had one that was listening on a port that would be like a room over here. So it was listening on port 2222. That's what the L means, is listen. The port means 2222. We have it set up. And then this one over here made that connection on port 2222 to myself. All right. So I'm just doing a quick demo, and then I can send data back and forth. You can say I sent just gibberish, right? So whenever I send it to that port, it originates from a port. So you can see here that this particular packet, it originated from port 2222. Let me see if I can zoom in right here. So that doesn't seem to work. Did that zoom in for everybody? I don't think Zoom is, well, yeah, it is working. All right, cool. So we have this packet originated from port 2222. And it was going back to 58203. And then when we communicate backwards, it goes from 5823 to 2222. So we create this pairing of these two ports where they communicate. Whenever I send traffic to port 2222, it responds by sending packets back to port 5823. This is so your operating system can differentiate multiple services running on this computer system, right? So that is a port on this computer system. Does that make sense to everybody? I want to make sure that everyone understands that, right? And I can look at that and I can find that directly in the TCP header. I go down to transmission control data and I can select source port is 22, which in hexadecimal is 08AE. And the destination port is right next to it. See, right there. And that is 58,203 and hex is E3 5B. All right. So just going through and kind of showing you how these ports tie up with each other, right? Now, what would be some great ports for malware to communicate on? Does anybody know? If I'm going to send packets out there, we're going to communicate, what would be some great ports to send traffic to and from on? That would be really, really super cool. That would be great ports. 53. 53 would be a great port. Port 80, right? The desired outcome, Henry, is to hide, right? We want to hide. 3389, we've got remote desktop protocol. 339, absolutely. DNS, right? We're going to use these ports. 5900 is VNC. So when we're looking at these ports, we're using ports that are normally used for day-to-day internet traffic to communicate on, because we want to hide in plain sight. And we'll talk more about that here in just a couple of seconds. Now, I mentioned that there's 65,536 ports times 2. There's 65,536 ports for TCP, but there's also 65,535 ports for UDP as well. Before we jump into that, why 65,536? Does anyone know where that number comes from? Where does 65,536 come from? It's 16 bits. So when you're looking at the source port, what's being sent and what's being received, there's 16 little ones and zeros that represent that port. And the total number of possible combinations are 0 to 65,535. Hence why I say there's 65,536, because 0 is a valid port. Does that make sense? 16 little bits for source port, 16 little bits represented for destination port as well. So you can see that same thing with UDP, all right? You can see that same thing with UDP. We have source port and we have destination ports, but those ports are specifically designated for UDP. Now, somebody threw out a really, really super great meme that was talking about the difference between TCP and UDP. Does anybody, can they reshare that meme? So TCP/IP was a DARPA initiative that was created because they wanted to make sure that the packet was sent, and it just flew really, really fast, the baby one. TCP, here's a baby. We got a sender, we're receiving, we're making sure the baby has been received. And UDP, it's just like YOLO, we're just sending that baby out, right? We call it a fire and forget protocol. Fire and forget protocol. There's no correlation to make sure that the packets were received properly. And we're going to get into sequence numbers here in just a couple of seconds. But when we're looking at UDP, we don't have that correlation to make sure that packets were sent and received properly. Now, the reason why the reason why TCP was created initially was because DARPA wanted to ensure that packets could traverse across the United States in the event of a nuclear attack. Now, what are some things that come with nuclear attacks out there? Anyone know? Like, nuclear attack happens, what's going to be flying around? You got EMP. That's right. That's right. We got fallout. What's the other thing that's scary about radiation, right? So in the military, they were worried about packets being sent over twisted copper pair wires. And radiation would interfere with the proper transmission. So they needed to have some integrity of those packets being sent so they could validate that the packets hadn't been corrupted by freaking radiation. All right. So let's just do some quick physics here, everybody, because I think that this is kind of important. At what temperature does copper melt? Anyone? What we're going to have copper wires. Where does it melt at? Let's do Fahrenheit. What's the temperature it's going to be at? 1984. A lot higher than the insulation, right? So if we got 1400, is it on the CISSP? It should be, right? All right. What temperature is a nuclear blast 1 mile away from it? It's higher than the melting temperature of copper. We'll just leave it at that. So at any rate, very specific number, how many suns, right? A tiny bit higher. So, but DARPA and DoD at that point, they didn't quite understand just how dangerous nuclear weapons actually were. They knew it created a big boom, but they didn't understand all of the other residual things that were out there. So they wanted to have a protocol that you could make sure that there was integrity of the data that was being sent and received when it was sent out. I'm going to show you how that works here in just a couple of seconds. Now, UDP doesn't have that. UDP it stands for Unreliable Dam Protocol or User Datagram Protocol. Honestly, it truly depends what circles you're hanging out in. My circles, we call it the Unreliable Dam Protocol, but it's fire and forget. That doesn't mean it's a worthless protocol. What would the value be in something like UDP, where we don't have the overhead of making sure the packets have been sent and received properly? Anyone? Speed, voice, streaming, movies, music, right? So if you drop a few packets here and there, it really doesn't matter. You may have a little bit of degradation in the video, a little bit of degradation in the audio, but it's just streaming, possibly gaming as well, right? So it's constantly going to be reestablishing where is your position in Fortnite? What is your orientation? Are you firing? Are you not firing? Are you scrunched under, what do they call it? Bushwhacking? All of those different things. You can send that very, very quickly and it's constantly updating. And if a packet doesn't get sent or received, there'll be a slight glitch, but it's probably not noticeable. So there's a difference in these two protocols. And how this is maintained is through something called the TCP/IP three-way handshake. So let's go ahead and let's jump into the TCP/IP three-way handshake. I'm going to show you what this looks like. I'm going to jump back into my virtual machine. And for this one, I'm going to use, I'm going to use Linux. I'm going to use Kali VM to show you what that looks like. Okay. All right. So I'm going to open up 3 separate Kali terminals. There's 1, 2, and 3. And what we're going to do is I'm going to become root here. I need to be root for what I'm about to do because I'm going to be sniffing traffic. All right. I'm going to be sniffing traffic on this computer system. So I need to be root to be able to see that. So I'm going to run TCP dump. And I'm going to put in my interface as my local loopback interface. All right. Then over here, I'm going to do that netcat thing again. And then I am going to connect over here to myself. All right. Excellent. So we just saw that packet that was sent back and forth. I'm going to try to make this a little bit bigger if I can remember where PuTTY puts all of that information. Change settings. I need to go to appearance. Can't remember where it puts the font size. There we go. It's right there. I'll get better at this as time goes on. Oh, geez. So that freaked out Putty, apparently. There we go. Let's make the font bigger. All right, so here we go. So this is my sniffing window right here. So I have my Netcat listener here on port 2222. I have my Netcat client that connects in on port 2222. And we're going to see some things in this packet header that are important. Each of the packets start with the date timestamp. So that is one packet right there. This is another packet right there. And then this is yet another packet right here. All right, so let's walk through each of these packets one by one. All right, so the first packet, it has a origination from the local host. That's just me talking from myself to myself. And the source port is 39508. 39508. So it's originating from that port. It's going to myself on port 2222, which you can see over here is where it's listening. Now, everything is going to go between those two ports, right? It's just going to be like playing badminton, right? It's going to go badminton between the two separate ports, all right? But we're going to be focusing on the sequence numbers now. We're going to focus on those sequence numbers. So you can see we have a sequence number, which is a 32-bit number. How many possible values are there for a 32-bit number? 16, we had 65,536 possible values. How many are there for a 32-bit number? Anyone? We got a bunch of people typing. Wow, everyone's way off. More than 7. Dapper Necromancer is right. How many possible values? 32-bit number. You doubled it. Now, yeah, there's 4.2 billion and change possible values for a 32-bit number. For 32-bit number. So Chad got it. 4.2 billion possible values for those sequence numbers. All right, for those sequence numbers. Now, this sequence number, when coupled with a port, allows your computer to differentiate your different streams that are coming in. Chad. Yes, absolutely. So we have this sequence number. So it's choosing a random sequence number out of the possible 32-bit value, and it's choosing that as 2531293162. All right. Now the next packet that responds, take a look at this. This is really cool. It's originating from port 2222, and it's going back to that port 39508. It's that badminton going back. All right. It's that badminton going back and forth. But I want you to look at the acknowledgement number. Do you guys see the difference between this acknowledgement number and the previous packet's acknowledgement number? What's the difference between these two? What's the difference between these two numbers? Luckily, the math ain't hard, folks. Incremented by 1. Very, very good. So the sequence number for the packet that was sent was the 2, right? Right? It ended in 262. And when it acknowledged it, it incremented it by 1. So it acknowledged that packet, that initial sequence number, by acknowledging it and then verifying that it's acknowledging the proper number by incrementing it by 1. But here's where it gets really, really, really weird. It creates a new sequence number. Check out the second packet, all right? The second packet acknowledges that previous sequence number, but then it starts a brand new sequence number. A brand new sequence number. And then the other system responds and it acknowledges that sequence number when data is sent and received. So whenever it's sending and receiving this data, all right, it's using those acknowledgement numbers and those sequence numbers to keep the communication intact, making sure that this communication on these ports are proper for these two systems. Now, let's say that somebody wanted to spoof this. If somebody wanted to spoof and jump in, they would have to guess one number out of 4.2 billion and change possible values in that. The question is, why is it an ACK of 1 in the third packet? Because it's showing the offset of the data, and that acknowledgement number in this particular situation, TCP dump is just compressing it down. Instead of showing you the number, it's basically telling you how much that data increased. So if I actually send data, you're going to see that acknowledgement number go up because I sent 49 bytes of data right here. Does that make sense? So instead of showing you the whole number, TCP dump is trying to be cute and telling you that the acknowledgement incremented by 49, or in the first one by 1. Does that answer your question? Now, if you look at the actual packet headers themselves, it'll show you those numbers. It won't just say it's incremented by 1 or 49. It's just TCP dump being cute. And we can change the way that TCP dump displays things. So I can take TCP dump and I can do, I want to see the ASCII decode. I'm going to do hex. So I can do this. And now if I send data, you can actually see that data being sent over here. So it'll show you the hexadecimal value and it'll show you the ASCII raw data. Like, you can actually see totally not my password because I messed it up typing it because I can't type when I'm teaching. It's one of those little foibles that I have. You won't make me nervous. All right. So that's how these packets are kind of keeping this information in sync with each other as well. So whenever we're trying to communicate between two systems, to kind of break this down a little bit, I send you a SYN packet. A SYN packet has a sequence number that's 32 bits long. You respond back with a packet that acknowledges that sequence number by incrementing it by 1, and then it starts a new sequence number, and then I acknowledge that sequence number, and then it goes through. So we have SYN, SYNACK, ACK, 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 ACK. Everything then becomes ACKs. It's all going to acknowledge the amount of data that was received. You can see we've got ACK 124, we've got ACK, what is it? 64 was another one, ACK 46. It's going to go through a series of ACKs and it's going to go ACK. ACK, 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 ACK. Does anyone here seen Mars Attacks? I see we have some Mars Attacks fans. Very good. I'm completely convinced that Mars Attacks is an in-depth introspection on the TCP/IP three-way handshake. I am further convinced that there was a scene that was cut by Tim Burton where a baby Martian is born, looks out of its mother, it goes, SYN! Its mom goes, SYNACK! And then that baby Martian communicates for the rest of its life going, ACK, 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 until the day it dies, at which point, what does it say? What does a Martian say when it dies? Fin. But we never saw that because their heads exploded due to country music. All right, let's keep going. So what are the different ports that you need to know, right? Because I've dropped a lot of crap on you, which, by the way, totally not going in the swear jar, okay? Totally not going in the swear jar. Crap doesn't count. To be honest, shit shouldn't count either, because that's an actual word that originates back to store high in transit, okay? That had to do with ships coming across the ocean that were sending manure, and they said, don't put this down in the bottom of the ship, because if it gets salt water on it, it's going to freaking combust. So store high in transit was a way of saying this is shit. Don't even get me started on For Unlawful Carnal Knowledge. Great album. Great album by Van Halen, but we aren't going to get into what that one is. But let's jump into ports because I completely digressed. Crap doesn't count. All right. So top 10 TCP ports, according to Nmap. This is by a port scanning group of people. This is by Fyodor. Gordon tracks this in his tool. And what are all the ports that are out there? There we go. These are the top ports that you need to understand to seem cool. You're getting into an interview. You're going in for a SOC analyst. And they say, what port is HTTPS? What do you do, hotshot? What do you do? Say that's generally on port 443. Thank you. Right? Port 80, unencrypted HTTP. 12 Telnet, 22 is SSH, 443. You have terminal services on 3389. Microsoft Data Services and NetBIOS. That's an internal protocol. We don't see that on the internet all that often. Port 21 for file transfer protocol and remote procedure call 135. SMTP traffic is on port 25. If you know those 10 things, if you know these 10 ports, you're already doing better than like 90% of the InfoSec professionals out there today. Okay? You're doing good. You're doing good. But wait, sorry, I'm going to complicate this even more. Shodan sees different ports. The reason why is Shodan looks at what are the ports that are exposed on the internet. Okay? All right? Because the internet is a little bit of everything all of the time. So when you're looking at what's on the internet versus what's on internal networks, you're going to see a slight discrepancy in the ports that are available to you. Now let's talk about what Shodan is. All right. So I'm going to log into Shodan. By the way, if you ever get the opportunity to get a Shodan account on Black Friday, you should take advantage of that. Okay. So Shodan looks at these ports and it says these are the ports that Shodan sees more, right? And remember, boredom is a crime. All right, so when we're looking at it, it collects data on web servers, it collects data on FTP servers, SSH porter servers, Telnet servers, SNMP, IMAP, all of these different things. Now, how many of you are completely confused over what the hell this stuff actually is? Like whenever I'm saying HTTP, I'm saying Telnet, I'm saying SNMP. Oh my God, what the hell are these things? What is anybody confused on this? Some of it. Excellent, but that's good. That's good. Some of it is good. That's great. We're starting somewhere. You have an idea, vague outline of a plan, right? When you're talking about SIP, you're talking voice over IP. Okay, so let me show you. So when Shodan crawls the entire internet, they're looking at certain ports and then they're gathering the banners for those ports to identify what those ports are. All right. So if I do a search on Jet Direct, what is Jet Direct? Anyone? What is Jet Direct? Any takers? What is Jet Direct? It's printers, right? So if I do a search, it's going to come back and it's going to say, here are all of the Jet Direct printers that it was able to identify. And it's going to give me what ports it saw these Jet Direct printers on. It says that I saw 4,272 Jet Direct printers running on port 515. I saw 662 on port 161. SNMP. Telnet was 113. And Korea had 2,743. United States only had 1,113. Now, these are printers that are connected directly to the internet. Connected, just right to the internet, just because why not, right? So you can see all of these Jet Direct printers. You can literally connect to them. You can send them print jobs and you can print all kinds of funny things to people on the internet. Things like, hey, get your printer off the internet. I can also do a search for Chuck Norris, right? So if I do a search for Chuck Norris, there's a whole bunch of Nginx servers out there that have references to Chuck Norris in their banners. I just think I broke Shodan by doing a Chuck Norris search. That's not cool. There we go. There's 35 Nginx servers that say Chuck Norris fears nothing that is not Emily. So these are banners where services identify what they are. This is a web server banner as an example. Okay. But wait, there's more. If I go to images.shodan.io, I'm going to get into a live demo with live data on the internet. For the record, this can go poorly. All right. I'm just throwing this out. Just this can go bad. I totally have had bad things show up on this. Like, I swear to God, one time I did this and Andrew Tate showed up. It's just no one wants that in your class. It's just scary when it happens. It's okay. We're going to get through it together. All right. So I'm going to do a search for images and I'm going to start by port 5900. All right. So we're going to go to port 5900. What is port 5900, y'all? Anyone know? What is port 5900? Any takers? Nope, not Tor. BNC. Scoob XP got it. Nailed it. These are virtual network computing systems. These are computer systems that have zero authentication and you can directly connect into their GUI environment, just like that. All right. So when you're looking at this, there's certain things that are ICS systems. What are ICS systems, y'all? Any takers? What does ICS stand for? Could be Modbus, absolutely. Industrial control systems. So if I select that tag inside of Shodan, it's going to show me all of the industrial control systems that have full VNC enabled, and these are all systems directly connected to the internet with no security whatsoever. How does that feel, huh? Oops. Hopefully no nukes. Oh my God. Look at all of the shame memes that are coming up, Zach, and Yuri. That's a lot of big oofs out there, right? That's why whenever I'm talking to people, they're like, oh, well, you have Black Hat or you have somebody that's like, I was able to hack into the server. It's no big deal. Hacking is easy. These things have no authentication to them whatsoever, right? And some of this crap scares you. Like Fusion Echo fuel systems. I hope to God that that isn't like a Mr. Fusion. Who knows, right? But we have all kinds of different pumps, more pumps, more pumps. There's a lot of pumps in industrial control systems because things got to stay cool. So there you go. So when we're looking at the ports that Shodan looks at, it looks at these ports and identifies the services based on the banners that these servers represent. So with TCP dump, we can identify the interfaces that I can sniff on. I can also read packet capture data as well coming from it. All right, we can read these packet captures. With TCP dump, I already did this. I can look at the hex and the ASCII data characters, right? So right here, here's hex, here's the ASCII. So as I'm sending data through, if I use those filters, you can see that data being sent in clear text. On the left side is the hexadecimal. It's telling me the offsets. And on the right side is the actual ASCII. Actual ASCII Shia LaBeouf, right? So we have the ASCII and we have the actual hexadecimal data being sent. Now, I can also use additional filters with TCP dump. And this is going to take us into a lab that's going to take us up to and through the break here in a couple of seconds, where you're going to analyze a packet capture. And we're going to look at what are the things that are inside this packet capture. What can we actually see? So with TCP dump, I can read in the packet capture for tie-door traffic, no interaction PCAP. This is packet capture from a backdoor that is malware that's in a PCAP. The X gives us the hexadecimal, the A gives us the ASCII, but we're going to put in some filters like host and port number, right? This is going to take a big packet capture and it's going to allow us to focus the data that comes back from TCP dump from this packet capture that we're reading to just show us what's in that packet capture. So here you can see get process Java service pages, and you can see that we have this weird bunch of gibberish. What's that? That's weird. Huh. I wonder if that's something evil. Huh. Well, we'll see. All right. You can also specify a write file where you can write the data out, where you can do -w and you can give it a file name and TCP dump will automatically write the data out. All right, so let's set you up on this lab. I'm going to stop sharing here for just a couple of seconds. Actually, no, I don't need to. I can do this. Just give me a couple of moments. Had something I wasn't quite ready for. So I got to do Tim, Roman, Labs. I need to get you all a link. Here we go. Just give me a second. Close this. Where are my labs? It's not the Strand JS labs. It's the other one. We'll get those up there here in just a couple of seconds. Just give me a moment. Stand by. Buffering, buffering, buffering. Got them. Here we go. Let me copy the link. I'm going to put this into Discord so you all have it. Oh, I did not want the save links link. Let's go to this link real quick. I'm going to do it here first. And then I will share it with everybody. I'm going to do this. Just give me a moment. Cows are mad at me. All right. So these are the labs for this class and also the intro to security and the cyber deception classes as well. So this is Austin went through with Tim and updated it. So the lab that we're going to be doing is the TCP dump lab and intro to SOC. So we're going to go right here. You all can see my screen still, right? Yeah, we're going to go right here. And we're going to go TCP dump. And it's going to give you step-by-step instructions on how to do this lab. Now, the goal of this lab is we're not doing any challenges like, hey, you should totally look at this packet capture and detect malware and do these things. No, we're just showing you what you can do with TCP dump. I'm going to show you some additional things. I'm going to walk through this in more detail slower here in just a little bit. But we're going to start with TCP dump, then we're going to move into Wireshark, and then we'll deal with Rita and AC Hunter because today is all about network traffic. So you're going to become root. You need to become root because we're working with TCP dump. You're going to read in a capture file that was previously captured and shared with you. When you're working in a security operations center, it's very common for people to create these things called packet capture files. And what it is basically they sniff the traffic and then they write it to a file, and then we can do analysis on that traffic on that forensics file at a later date. All right. Yes, we should totally move Cloud Lab and Kaiser Git instructions from now on. Those are the ones we're using, Brian. You're going to go through and it's going to break down and explain what the different headers are. Then you're going to not resolve any names or IP addresses. You're going to read in the packet capture. We're going to focus on a host. So many times when you're working in a SOC, you're going to start with a host that is potentially compromised. You'll start there and then you'll break out. So somebody would say, hey, it looks like Bob's computer is hacked. Well, what's Bob's IP address? Bob's IP address is 192.168.99.52. We can go to our packet capture and we can focus in on Bob's traffic on that as well. If I have Kali on my Oracle VM, can I use that? Nope. Dr. Sploat, you got to use the VMs that we have because I have all of the tools and all of the evidence files provided in Cloud Labs. So please use that. TCP dump, we're going to go ahead and read it in. Then we're going to put in another filter where we want to see the ASCII decode of that packet. Then we're going to kind of drill down and we're going to look for some PowerShell. And I'm going to talk more about how we would know this is PowerShell, how we would parse it, how we would research it, how we'd know it's base 64. But I'm showing you this because we're going to come back and look at this exact same packet capture with a different tool called Wireshark a little bit later. All right. So there you go. That's the lab. We're going to be running that inside of the Cloud Lab here. And we'll set it up. I wonder if my Cloud Lab ran out of credits. Just entirely possible that it did. But we're going to get started with this lab. We're going to jump straight in and run it there. I don't recommend using Cloud Labs HK anymore because the lab instructions are very different. Lab instructions are very different between the two. Because in the VM that you use to download, we do that one for my cyber deception class. We no longer are using it. The lab instructions are different. So you're going to go into resources. You're going to get into the Cloud Labs with MetaCTF, and you're going to set them up there. All right. So I'm going to go ahead and start my lab back up. So I'm ready to do the walkthrough. Oh, by the way, what's the number one tech troubleshooting thing that you do every single time? Like if you have a problem, what do you do? Like if everything seems broken and all hope is lost, turn it off and on again. If you come back to this main one, you click destroy lab and restart all the machines. That's one of the cleanest ways to fix things. Just destroy it and start back over. All right, let's get rolling. All right, let's keep rolling with it. All right, so the best way to start up the virtual machines, just so you all know, is to select the start all virtual machines or start all machines button that you see here. We have some people that are starting the VMs individually. And you can do that. You can start one and then start the other. That's fine too. But just make sure that you start up both of them. All right, so I am in my VM. We're inside of the Kali VM. I made my font bigger and bignified the font. So we've got that. So let's go through this lab slowly. All right, so I've got my Kali prompt open. The first thing I'm going to do is become root. We're going to spend a lot more time on the Linux command line. I had to start somewhere with this course, just so you know. The problem with starting with just Linux or just Windows is we talk a lot about ports, we talk a lot about traffic, we talk a lot about a number of different things. But the problem with it is it all comes back to network traffic, right? We always come back to ports and protocols and packets that are being sent. Always, always, always need to make sure that we're there. And Ryan, we got some people saying they can't hear me on YouTube. Let's double check that out as well. All right, so what we're going to do now is we're going to go back to the VM and we're going to start running the commands. I'm going to become root first. There we go. And then I'm going to cd into the opt TCP dump directory. That is where the previously captured malware dump is. So this is a packet capture of malware doing malware things, right? It's a backdoor compromised a computer system, and we can see the data that's being sent back and forth. Now, this particular backdoor is interesting because it's not encrypted traffic. A little bit later, we'll talk about how we deal with encrypted traffic in a lot more detail in just a few moments out there as well. So we're going to look at this packet capture. Nothing special about it. It's just unencrypted, and it really helps us use a lot of commands on that. Yeah, this command, if you see this error, potentially security breach, just click accept. You'll be fine. All right. Now I'm going to do a read of that PCAP file. So we're going to run TCP dump. The nmains don't resolve any names. I don't want to try to resolve what the IP addresses are. And I'm going to read in a previously captured file. All right. We're going to read in magnitude 1 hour.pcap, and I'm going to filter for just that host. Now, normally how this would work is you would say, hey, Bob's computer appears to be compromised. We would get Bob's IP address, and we would focus in on the traffic on Bob's computer. And that's what we're doing here. So I'm just going to copy and paste that over. We're going to read in that magnitude 1 hour PCAP file. We've got the host, we've got the port. I want to see the ASCII, and I want to see the hex. So now we can see all of that data coming by very, very, very fast, which brings us to one of the important things in Linux and Unix, and that is the pipe. All right. So this has nothing to do with smoking pot or any of those different things, but we can pipe it through, and we can basically allow us to not pause, but like chunk through that data a little bit better. Let me kill this because it's a lot of data coming through. So kill it with fire. Stop, Collie. Just doing its thing. Go, Collie, go. All right. So it just runs and runs and runs and runs and runs. All right. So now what I can do is I can take that data where I'm seeing the ASCII and I'm seeing the hexadecimal data in that host, and I don't want it to just scream past the screen very quickly. I can take that and I can pipe it through less. This allows me to page it. Okay. So now, instead of it just all rolling through the screen very, very quickly, I'm piping that output through another Linux command. That's one of the cool things. It's kind of, you're really starting to do some basic programming. You're taking the output from one program and you're piping it through into another program. In this situation, we're piping it through a program called less. So that allows me to look at the data one page at a time. All right. So now you can see that I have some get strings. I can get themes index.php. That's kind of neat. If I hit spacebar, I can now start paging through that data and seeing more data in a cleaner way that allows me to actually interact with that data instead of it just blowing by my screen very, very, very quickly. All right. So that's kind of neat. So we're able to see that data. Oops, I went over too much. Let's see if I can get some of this in here. But yeah, you can see a bunch of data on the right. It looks like gibberish. We got to find out, is it in fact gibberish, or is there other things going on here? All right, so I'm going to hit Q to break out of that. And we're just going to focus on the port 80 traffic now. And I'm going to continue to use that pipe command just because I like it. I think it's cool. We're going to pipe it through less. Now we can see that data coming through, and now I can page through it. Now here I'm just looking at the packet headers. I got rid of the hex and the ASCII characters, but it allows me to see what is being sent and received between the two systems that we have here as well. All right, so far so good. Where are we going next with the lab? We're talking about, the base 64 encoded strings and things like that. Let's get some ASCII data in here. Paste that in. I don't want to see the hex too, but I am going to pipe it through less. There we go. And now we can see the ASCII decode. And if I hit space a number of times, I start to see things like what's on the screen right now. And this is crazy, right? Now, I mentioned that some of you may be confused about this. Like I can look at this and I can say that this is PowerShell. It's a straight up PowerShell data, and it's base 64 encoded. Now, the question is, how the hell do I know that? I like the quote, is it gibberish or is it malware? Only as Barbara can tell. Let's start with this. Let's start with the very, very beginning because it's a very good place to start. I have this right here where it says new object. Let's say I want to know what that is. What would I do to find out what that new object actually is? Like, what could I do? That anyone know? What could I do? Yeah, I can Google it, right? So if I go through this a couple of times, you can see that I have new dash object. So I can take that and I can copy it, and then I can do a search on that as well. So we'll just do a search on new object, and it comes back and it says new object is a PowerShell utility. The new object command line creates an instance of a .NET framework or a COM object. Okay, I still have no idea what that is. Let's say I just don't have any idea at all about what's going on, but I can look a little bit deeper past that new object. You can see where it says convert from base64 string. So now I can do a search on that, and I can do from base64 string, PowerShell. And then I can get some usage information on what that PowerShell command is, right? So you can see that we can actually encode and decode the data utilizing just straight Google, and we can see that it's base64 encoded, right? Now, I don't expect you all to be able to like just jump into this and be like, yes, this all makes sense to me. I sprung forth from my father's head, completely formed, angry, and I knew how to do base64 encoding and decoding and identifying PowerShell. However, what I do expect you to do is use Google and even ChatGPT, right? Like these are powerful tools, right? These are very, very powerful tools that you can use. And there's unfortunately a lot of people that look at using Google or using ChatGPT as though it's something really, really bad. And it's not. It's just, it's just a tool, folks, right? If we're looking at ChatGPT, it's just another tool that's in your arsenal. It doesn't mean that you're a moron for using ChatGPT. It just means you're using a tool that's at your disposal to help you understand what these things mean. CyberChef is another great utility. With CyberChef, it can try to do base64 decoding it. For the record, this particular backdoor is difficult to decode because there's characters that are dropped in the middle of it that are not base64 encoded characters. Like these slashes and these pluses are not base64 characters. And if you try to decode it just with straight base64 decoding, it doesn't work that well. But there are other tools that'll do that as well. Like you can use base64 dash dash decode with ignore dash garbage, and it'll ignore some of these characters. But using that kind of like using Google and using like let's say ChatGPT, you might be able to help. So I'm going to try something. I'm going to take this entire thing and I'm just going to throw it into ChatGPT, and let's see what ChatGPT comes up with, right? So let me go to OpenAI. I honestly don't know what it's going to do, for the record. I just don't. What does this do? Okay. And then I'm going to paste it in. Let's see what ChatGPT does. Does it actually decode it? That'd be pretty sweet if it did. That's pretty cool. It's kind of breaking it down, right? How is that? Isn't that cool? Now, is this necessarily cheating for you all? I don't think it is, right? And Copilot and some of these things are really, really helpful as well. So when we're looking at things like ChatGPT, when we're looking at things like Google, and by the way, it didn't completely decode the string and tell you what it was doing, or it was actually using PowerShell to open up a connection to, I think, a GitHub link, pull down the malware, and then execute the malware. But it did a really good, like kind of breakdown of explaining stuff to get you started with it. And when you're looking at ChatGPT, you're looking at AI, you're looking at all of these different things. I want you to think of it in terms of Luddites, right? So a long, long, long time ago in a galaxy far, far, far away, you had these groups of people called Luddites that were going through the countryside and smashing looms. And they were smashing looms because there was a fear that looms were going to completely destroy the textile industry, put a bunch of people out of work. And to be fair, that exact thing happened. As looms came up, we didn't need as many people going through and creating textiles, right? It changed fundamentally the way the world worked. This new technology mean that there were fewer people that were in the textile industry making garments. Their fear was somewhat justified. Now, there's two groups of people in that. One, people that never did textiles again, and two, people that embraced that technology, learned how to utilize that technology, they remained employed. Same thing happened with slide rules, going through in the 60s. Oh, you can't use a slide rule because it's cheating. Then we had it with calculators, right? Can't use a calculator because it's cheating. Then you couldn't use specific calculators like the TI-85. Can't use a TI-85 because that's cheating, right? Spell check. I remember my first paper I ever wrote and printed on a dot matrix printer when I was in grade school. It had spell check and Ashton Tate framework software for word processing. I got an F because I cheated by using a computer with spell check. Point is, you have all of these new technologies that are coming up all of the time. And it's very natural for people to freak out and say this new technology is cheating and it's bad and all these different problems, but it's just a tool. And you're going to have people that know how to properly embrace, utilize, and make these tools work for them. And you're going to have people that try to fight it, and you're going to have people that don't understand it. You really need to be somebody really that's focused on understanding these new technologies, because taking something as confusing as the data that we're getting here and converting that into something that starts to make sense, where ChatGPT is explaining it to you or Google is explaining it to you, is a very powerful learning and applied learning technique for everyone out there. All right. So now let's talk a little bit about Wireshark, and we're going to go into yet another lab that's really going to highlight all of these different things and how these tools are different in the way that they're actually applied. Because ChatGPT is going to get you really, really far, but it ain't going to get you all the way. You're still going to have to interpret that data, take that data that turns into information. You're going to have to turn it into knowledge, and then you're going to have to turn that knowledge into action. And if you know how to properly take knowledge, turn it into information, and then understand how to properly control and work with that knowledge, that becomes power. And that is a primer to Michel Foucault. All right, so Wireshark. Wireshark and interfaces. You saw me do this earlier where I was running Wireshark on the local loopback interface, and I was capturing the traffic that was coming and going in my system. You can do that relatively easily, right? Like I can open up Wireshark and I can choose an interface for it to sniff on. And in this situation, I'm just going to choose the adapter, the Ethernet adapter on my system. It's going to show the interfaces down here in just a couple of seconds. Remind me later. Let's go to Ethernet 3, and then it can show me all the traffic that is being sent and received. Now, a lot of this traffic that you're seeing right now is Guacamole RDP data, right? So you're going to see that Guacamole session. I'm watching myself, watching myself, watching myself, watch myself, watching myself, watch myself, all right? So I can do that, right? I can also look at this and do like the loopback interface. I'm going to continue that without saving. Stop. There we go. And I can go capture, and then I can choose my interface options again, and I can do like the adapter for local loopback, and then I can ping myself. And now I can see my ping traffic right here, my ICMP echo request, my ICMP echo reply. All right. So I can turn on Wireshark, and it allows me to start sniffing the traffic on my system. Pretty basic and easy to do. Now, one of the nice things about Wireshark is it'll show you which of the interfaces are active. By the little squiggly graph lines, it'll tell you which one is actually working on it right now. I just did a ping. I did it live. You can see the ICMP echo request. The packet breakdown we did earlier, where we saw it in TCP dump, and then we saw Wireshark, where we could click on different aspects of the packet, and we can get data about that packet. So I can open up Wireshark again. I can open up a PCAP file, which is what you're going to do. And then any of those packets that are interesting to me, I can select on it, and it'll give me data about that packet. It'll break up the TCP IP header, the 4-layer stack over here on the left. It'll break it up for me. And then on the right-hand side, it'll show me the ASCII decode associated with that traffic as well. What are some other tools we can use to help remove the garbage in PowerShell commands and interpret it? One of the most powerful tools out there is a tool called CyberChef. And CyberChef allows us to use recipes where we can encode and decode data with base64, hexadecimal, and a bunch of other things out there. Also from the command line, you can use base64 decode. There's command line tools that'll do it as well. You can also use Python to decode that data. But I recommend start using with CyberChef first. That would be the best place to start. Let me actually show you that real quick because I think that that's fun. How are we doing on time? Great on time. Let's go to CyberChef. All right. So if I have base64 encoded data, right? First, let me create some base64 encoded data. Hi, this is base64. Okay. So notice that right now CyberChef is showing me the input and the output is the same. All right. That's because I have no recipes in here at all. So what I can do is I can take this data and I can create a recipe that takes this hi, this is base64, and it automatically encodes it into base64, right? And then I can add more things to it. And you can see it's automatically creating that base64 for me. Now, if I see a base64 encoded string, nope, it's not a GUI version of TCP-dump. Wireshark is, and I'll get to that here in a second. Let's say that I was given this string of data. I can copy that data. Let me clear this out. I'll just make that go away. I'm going to pause it for now. And I can take this, and now I can use that input that I believe to be base64, and then I can create another recipe that's from base64. And then it'll allow me to start, it'll allow me to drop that recipe. There we go, from base64. And then it'll allow me to start taking that base64 and decoding it. But it had some trouble decoding it. Why is that? Well, there's a number of things that you can do with base64 encoded data that I forgot the S at the start. Did I not copy it all properly? There we go. So if I don't get that base64 encoded data perfect, you can see it changes everything. So if I change one character, it changes the entire string, so it doesn't work properly. And that's important because it's a type of encoding that can be used to bypass different types of techniques. Now, if you're looking at it in my string, there is a bunch of different base64 and like dropped data in the malware. Like we have plus symbols in the middle of it, and that breaks the base64 encoding and decoding. It does. Now you can use this with ignoring garbage, and I can talk about that, but you would use -- ignore garbage. That's one of those ways where CyberChef doesn't do so well. So learning how to work through these things using a variety of different techniques can be helpful. But for now, the only thing that you need to know is that you can use tools like CyberChef to help you start decoding that base64 encoded data. So there you go. Hopefully that helped. All right. The other thing that you can do with Wireshark is you can follow a TCP IP stream. You have each of these different packets. And you remember we talked about those sequence and those acknowledgement numbers, and it allowed the rug to kind of hang together. Wireshark has the ability to take a stream of data and reassemble it in such a way so only packets that are part of that SYN-ACK communication stream are displayed. To do that, I would right click on one of them. I would go follow TCP stream. And now it brings up only the packets that are part of that stream. And it automatically gives me the ASCII decode of that stream. Red is a request, blue is a response. And now I can see all of the data that is being sent and received between the two computer systems. All right. This is really powerful because I don't need to go through and do this manually. You can see that TCP.stream equals 1. So the first TCP stream that it sees, it's going to reassemble all of the packets that are associated with that stream. Right, let's keep going. Statistics, I can look at communication between the different systems. So I can clear this particular out. I can do analyze. Let's go statistics. And let's look at let's go to conversations. I'll do endpoints. And I can look at the communication, which endpoints are communicating with which other endpoints in this particular communication stream. So I can see that these are the different systems, and I can sort and say, who are my top talkers? So I can see that 192.168.99.53 is sending the most traffic in the network. I can also go through and I can go statistics, go conversations, and it's going to show me who they're communicating with. I can focus on A to B communication, And I can see that this internal IP address is talking with this external IP address. So my internal IP of 192.168.99.52 is talking to this external system out on the open internet, and it's talking back and forth with 29,000 packets. Wouldn't you like to know what's in those packets? Of course you would. So all you need to do to see what's in those packets is right click on that communication stream, align it as a filter between those two systems, and TCP dump automatically creates a filter for you that shows you all of the communication between those two computer systems. And then once again, you can right click, you can do follow TCP/IP stream, and now you can see the data that is being sent and received between those two computers. So fantastic, really super powerful tool for you to look at those conversations. Oh, we did that already. You can also look at the protocol hierarchy. Is it mostly Ethernet? Is it IPv4, NetBIOS, SMB traffic? Is there address resolution protocol? It'll tell you what are the protocols that are actually used. HTTP requests. This is kind of critical because if I go to statistics, go to HTTP, and I go requests, you'll have a lot of communication. And the reason why this is weird is if somebody goes to yahoo.com, yahoo.com doesn't mean that all the traffic actually comes from yahoo.com. When you go to something like yahoo.com, yahoo.com does a 302 redirect that loads a whole bunch of traffic from other websites. So it'll start hosting ad data from third-party websites, tracking data from tons of third-party websites as well. So you can see how that all communicates, but it all starts with one little request going back to yahoo.com. So if you look at all the HTTP requests, you can see that we have Windows updates. I'm not interested in that. Weather.microsoft.com, probably not interested in that. But if I look at the HTTP request, I can see that I have wilfordcostume.baymoon.com. Well, that's kind of crazy. That's our malware. So it allows us to see those HTTP requests, and it breaks it down. Instead of being thousands and thousands and thousands of packets, it's a handful of requests that are actually made from my computer system going out to the internet. That's pretty cool. Makes that big hay bale into something that's more manageable in your environment as well. Now, let's talk about which one is better, because I disagree with you. Network Miner is a different tool. It doesn't mean it is better. Network Miner is just another tool that you can download. You can get right here. You can put this in, share that with everybody. Network Miner is different. Network Miner is not nearly as powerful in the filtering, statistic analysis, and all the things that you can do as Wireshark, but does that mean it's not as good? No. Network Miner is easier. It'll automatically extract out files. It'll automatically extract out images. It'll automatically extract out DNS queries, and it'll show it in different buckets. But it's not necessarily better. Looking at Wireshark versus TCP dump, which one is better? Well, it doesn't quite work that way. And the reason why it doesn't necessarily work that way is TCP dump is much better at high bandwidth network packet captures. So if you're working on something like a 10 gig switch, 15 gig switch, you're not going to use Wireshark to capture that data. You're going to use something like TCP dump to do it. You might use Zeek, which is completely different still. Wireshark has amazing analytics and amazing GUI things, but usually what I end up doing is I end up carving out the data that's interesting to me with TCP dump, writing it out to a smaller file, and then doing the analysis with Wireshark. It's important for you to understand that it isn't an issue of what tool is better. It's more of understanding is which tool should I use in which situation. The other tool that we didn't get a chance to talk about at all was T-Shark. T-Shark is taught by Chris Breton, who does all kinds of different pay-what-you-can classes with us as well, that talks about how to use T-Shark for different filters and different things that you can do. So all of these tools are tools that you absolutely need to understand. It's not a matter of one is better than the other. And I see people that get really confident about that, but then all of a sudden, whenever you go to a job interview and they ask you, what situation would you use Wireshark? What would you use TCP dump? You don't ever want to be at a job interview and be like, well, I think that network, general is the best tool. out there because I used Network General 25, 30 years ago, right? It's not like that. Okay. So it's about finding the right tool that you should be using. So we've got tons of great tools out there. After we're done with this lab, we're going to be talking about Zeek and Bro and those things. Zeek, not Bro anymore. So the next lab we're going to do is Wireshark. All right. So we're going to select Wireshark. Who here is ready to do a little bit of preconditioning job hunting? What we're going to do tomorrow with Jason, who's ready for that. Talk about how to properly job hunt. Okay, we got a number of people. Let's do it. All right. So as I mentioned, the incorrect way to job hunt is, and we're going to do this, and then we're going to do Ask Me Anything at the end of it. And I think that the two will chain in really, really, really well on this as well. But, let's talk about the incorrect way to job hunt. The incorrect way to job hunt is to try to get your resume so it looks good. You have this kind of mistaken assumption that is put into the industry that what you need to do is have your resume look super awesome, and then people are going to look at your awesome resume and they're going to somehow look at this beautiful resume and this is the person that we're going to hire. It's kind of like, do you remember American Psycho? There's this movie, American Psycho. Turn on that. Business card, the business cards, where he's looking at the business cards and how does he take someone's like business cards being better than his business cards, right? He gets mad about it. And I think he ends up killing someone over it. But you know, it's the business card. Like that's the thing that really matters is the business card. People look at their resume as the same thing because the resume is like this one thing that you put out into the world. And the idea is you're going to create this beautiful, amazing resume and people are just going to, they're going to want to hire you because your resume is so awesome. All right. No one gives a shit about your resume. They just don't. Right? The only thing that they're going to be doing is they're going to be going into the resume and they're going to be looking for specific keywords and phrases to make sure that you are hitting that initial keywords phrase to get you to the next level where you can actually start doing interviews with the company. All right. So what we want to do is stop trying to make your resume look awesome, where they're going to be like, you know what? This person may not have all the keywords that we have in her job, but they look like they're a contender. They're using an amazing font. And look at the way that they did the breaks in the page. And it's like, is that thicker cardstock paper? Oh, this is someone we want to hire. Yeah. No, it doesn't work that way. All right. So let me kind of show you if I was hunting for a job, how I would hunt for a job in this day and age out there. So I'm kind of senior, so I would be looking for a senior security IT analyst job in, let's say, Colorado. Like if I'm in the industry and I want to hunt for a job, and and the reason why I would hunt for this job is I applied years ago for Raytheon Polar Tech Services, and I didn't get that job, and I'm still a little salty over it. I might tell you about that interview later if we have more time on the Ask Me Anything. But I didn't get the job with Polar Tech Services, and it still smarts a little bit. Still a little frustrated, but whatever. Now I have an opportunity because now the position for Arctic Research is all down to Battelle is now the company that is running it. And I want to show you the senior analyst IT role and kind of what they give for information and how little they give for information about this and why this is just like just a crap job posting. And this is a classic example of a job posting that's out there and they're just waiting for that magical narwhal whale to show up and just crush it and have everything that they're actually looking for. And we're going to do that, right? I'm going to show you how we can look at what the job posting is for Battelle, and we can try to identify what the actual technology stack is, and we can make our resume match the specific job that we're going after. All right, so let's do it. So this has really crap data, right? I got some information. It's like delivers, others can't, and blah, 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 job summary. Wow, this is rough. The position under the direction of the IT manager is responsible for establishing and maintaining IT governance in the Battelle Arctic research operations. I'm going to I'm going to try to find a little bit more about that here in just a couple of seconds. We've got the NIST 800 guidelines. Maybe they can give me a little bit more information. Is it the 853? What is CMMC? Like, what are we looking for in this particular role? It's in Boulder, but it can be fully remote. The reason why I like that job is I live in South Dakota because clearly I hate people. We got periodic review, the security policies, comparable existing industry government policies. We're looking at project managers, ARO technology, information technology. They're not giving me a lot. They're not giving me a lot of information on like what is the technology that they're using, but I have some stuff down here. A bachelor's degree in computer information systems, 8 years of information technology, governance, compliance, knowledge, software development patterns, vulnerability assessments. Okay. We're now starting to get some things, software testing methodologies, effective verbal and written communication, management planning, whatever. Now, I've got the 800 docs. Like, I've got the 800 171, right? So I can, like, well, I've been doing this forever. Like, what the hell is 871? Protecting controlled unclassified information. All right, awesome. I'm going to throw that into a tab. NIST 853 is the general framework. I'm familiar with that. So we're going to go ahead and open up that document there. Now, salary between 109,000 to 150,000. I'm going to tell you for this role that seems a little low, especially on the 109,000. It seems a little bit low on that, but whatever. And then we have benefits. They left me with nothing. Like I got jack on this. So what I want to do is I want to make it so that my resume fits what Battelle is actually looking for. But other than a couple of compliance frameworks, like I have little to nothing to go off of. All right. I have little to nothing. So how am I going to deal with this? Well, the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to start profiling Battelle and what is the technology stack that Battelle is using. And I'm going to start with a couple of very, very basic tools, right? So the first thing I'm going to use is a website called BuiltWith. And BuiltWith is going to give me what is the technology that the main website that Battelle uses and other technologies that it references. We've got like analytics and tracking. Screw that. I'm moving past that. But I'm going to go right into widgets. I know that they use WebEx. I might be able to find some hardening guides for WebEx. I don't think benchmarks have anything for WebEx. I think it's all alphabetical. Maybe they do. No, I don't see anything on WebEx, but you can look up some standard, like what are some standard methodologies for hardening WebEx. Now I get down and I see that they're using Cloudflare. All right. So one of the things I would do is I would start looking at what are the proper ways to configure and audit Cloudflare. So you could do like security configurations, Cloudflare. All right. And I can try to find some different tools and some different ways, like, security configuration for Cloudflare, DNS, and try to get some websites that are like, here are the basic ways to use Cloudflare and set up Cloudflare. What is DNS security? Going to the best practices. Oh, here we go. Security best practices for Cloudflare configurations. All right. So I've got some documents and I have some things in here. Like right here, what are my site protection options? Responding to DDoS attacks, best preventative options for DDoS. So now I'm starting to get some things like setting up two-factor authentication, setting up members. What are the active sessions? What are the DDoS protection levels, security levels, browser integrity? How do I enable DNSSEC? So I'm starting to get some basic fundamentals for Cloudflare. So I would spend a lot of time, because Cloudflare has free stuff, I would spend a lot of time doing research on how can I configure Cloudflare appropriately. Get familiar with it. I don't want to know it inside out and backwards, but I at least want to get familiar with some of the core things associated with Cloudflare and what they have there. Other things that we have, they're using Trellic. Okay, so I might do some research on Trellic. I can see that they're predominantly ASP.NET and Java environment. So here you can start going into Java security. Let's do ASP. I think I just messed up. There we go. So how do I set up Microsoft IIS? So I know that they're running an ASP.NET infrastructure. I know that they're running it on IIS. So I can start researching what are some of the configurations that I can learn for IIS. So you'd basically download this Microsoft configuration guide for IIS servers. Awesome. So now I know that they're running IIS. I got Java triple or double E. I know that they're using Azure. Now for here, I can go into CIS and I can start learning like what are the different Azure security settings that I would want to run. Like you would see that Microsoft Cloud Office 365. So what we're doing is we're building a technology profile for Battelle, and I'm going to spend time researching. And then as I'm researching these things, I'm going to put that in my resume saying, I am familiar with Cloudflare security technologies. You're going to put in, I am familiar with, let's say, Azure security best practices, right? You're going to start looking at these hardening guides and getting familiar with them. And then we can get a little bit crazy, right? So I can start doing site searches and I could do minus www. So I'm going to remove their main website. I've got the Inside Battelle blog. I don't really care about that. So I'm going to move that away. I'm going to get rid of jobs. Okay, now I've got this file exchange. All right, awesome. Now I'm starting to find what is the file exchange program that Battelle actually uses. So what is the technology that they're using here? Unfortunately, I don't see a lot of information about what this file exchange software is. It looks to me like it might be custom, but now I can take this fx.battelle.org and I can throw it into built with. Let's go ahead and go back, put that in. And see what technology. Okay, awesome. So I now know that they're using Microsoft Azure for their file sharing platform. Okay. I know that they're using jQuery, right? So now I can do some search on jQuery security best practices. There we go. jQuery security best practices. Awesome. Great. So now I'm going to put that on hold. I'm going to come back to it. I know they're using HSTS. That's awesome. That means they're protecting themselves from SSL strip attacks. I might throw that in, familiar with SSL strip attacks and how to deal with HSTS and things like that. Standard JavaScript that we would expect. Okay, cool. So I have one technology. I know that they got that. Let's do next gen STEM. Let's go ahead and remove that. There we go. I'm going to remove proceedings. Okay, so this looks like this is a conference platform that they're using. Nope, it's not. These are just conferences. It's not proceedings, so we're going to go ahead and kick that out. Okay, VDI, excellent. So this is their virtual desktop environment that they're using. So now I'm seeing what they have for VDI and their virtual desktop, so I'm going to throw that into built with. Big IP. Great. So I know that they're using Big IP, and I think that there's CIS guides in here for Big IP. Maybe there's not, but you can go back to Big IP security best practices. There we go. Security deployment best practices. All right, let's keep rolling. Oh, great. Here I know that they're using Citrix. Awesome. So they have VDI and they also are running Citrix, which is the same thing. That's really weird that they go back to the same place. They're just pointing to the same place. So now that I know that they're using Citrix, do I have a Citrix guide for this? Nope. All right. But I'm going to go ahead and do Citrix security best practices. There we go. Excellent. What else do we got? What the hell is that? Web SPS 31. That's weird. I don't know what this is. This looks like a partner portal. I'm going to throw that in as well to build with. Get a technology profile of it. Yeah, I don't know what that is. I'm going to leave that alone. Might be able to do something with it a little bit later and figure out what it is. Link to, oh, they use SharePoint. Excellent. So they've got SharePoint publicly exposed. Awesome. Great. Here's a password reset portal. Password change. Ooh, this is going to be fun. I don't even know what the hell this is. Woo! LDAP toolbox, self-service password. What the hell is that? That's pretty crazy. So here's some documentation on that. It's a PHP app. Okay. What the hell is Matthew challenges, right? That's crazy. What are these? What are these challenges at Patel? This is nuts. Oh, it's a CTF environment. So Battelle has their own CTF environment and they're using CTFD. All right. Okay. Okay. So this is all cool. This is all cool. We got scoreboard. Will it just show me the scoreboard and the teams? Or do I have to authenticate? Matthew, by the way, is first place. He's doing really good on that. Matthew's kicking ass, right? This is crazy. Do they have a separate? Look at this. This is nuts. They have Matthew, Christopher. Christopher has his own CTFD instance. Okay, that one can't be reached. All right. Oh my God, William, they have Samuel, all of their users that are their CTFD instance is completely exposed. So that would be awesome, right? But I'm going to remove challenges just because I know it's a thing and I've got it opened up. That's awesome. Why the hell is that exposed, right? All right, so we're going to remove challenges. Okay, we're going to clean all of that out. We're going to keep going. Um, projects, ANAP, application and network access. What the hell is that? Apparently, it's the same thing. Um, info. All right, I'm getting really far down a let's remove projects here. All right. All right, so what do we have here? So now I know that whenever I am going to be creating my resume for Patel, and by the way, how much time have I spent on this? I've spent 15 minutes. All right. So I've got a pretty good technology profile for Patel. So I'm going to make sure I can read the NIST 853 and the 171. I'm also going to look at some of the CMMC stuff so I can make sure that I'm kind of familiar with CMMC. And you're not going to lie in your resume, by the way. You're not going to put the shit in your resume and then basically don't learn it, right? What you're going to do is you're going to set this up so whenever you have your resume established, you just reconned this organization. And by the way, I am fairly convinced I could go even further with some of these things that are out there. I don't know, like password. Oh, they use RSA Secure ID too. I can remove info. Go ahead and remove info and ha. Okay. All right. Okay. So we can continue to dig down this path, but now I know that they're using CTFD, right? So, oh wow, this is crazy. So here's their secure ID portal with all of their questions that they have, right? Here is one of their login portals for reset. They also have the self-service portal for LDAP Toolbox and those things. I might research LDAP Toolbox and all of those different things. Yeah, this will all be available for playback. I know that they're using Citrix as their external platform. So I want to go through and start putting in these things and getting familiar and doing some research against this company, right? And then I'm going to make sure that my resume says that I have a certification. I'm going to talk about certifications here in just a moment. I'm going to put in what relevant IT experience I have. I'm going to put in this class because I think that class is important. But then I'm going to have a section like technologies I am familiar with. It doesn't mean that you're an expert. It just means that you're familiar with it. So I'm going to put in CTFD. So in my resume, I'm going to say I'm familiar with CTFD. I know that it's an open source command and capture the flag framework, you're going to kind of look into that. You're also going to say, I'm familiar with the LDAP Toolbox self-service password portal. Because, yeah, I'm totally going to do some research on that. Like, what are the best practices for this? Like, what is LDAP? How does it actually work? How do I set up these aliases? How do I secure these things? Like, you're going to do the research. You're going to have to do the work. This isn't enough about you just putting together an awesome resume. You're going to have to sit down and you're going to have to learn these things as well. What are some other things that we're going to look at? Some of the other technologies like CloudFront. What is CloudFront? How does CloudFront work? How does Big IP work? How does that set up? How do I learn with F5 networks? How do I work with Azure and best practices in the cloud? So if I'm looking at CIS, I can look at cloud providers. There's an entire section here with Microsoft Azure, and you're going to learn the benchmark of the security relevant settings of Microsoft Azure. Now, all of this, now you have a resume that you have all of the bait for them to now come after you, right? So we've got an understanding of basic compliance. We've got an understanding of like some of these, like I've gone through and I've read the NIST 800. I know the NIST 853 and the 171. You're going to learn what FedRAMP is, CMMC, DFARS as well. And you're going to be familiar with these things. Now, this is a job that I would go after, right? This is a senior level job. I would absolutely go after this job if I was job hunting in Denver, Colorado, right? So you have that kind of capability. Now we can take this a little bit further and maybe I can see if there's any jobs specific to the Battelle Arctic research operations in job titles. And let's now see if we can get a little bit better technology profile. I don't see anything there. Well, that's Memorial Institute. See if I can find any other technologies. No, it's the same posting. All right. We don't have a lot there. So now I've got that profile. I have all of that stuff. I am going to put in the work and I'm going to go through and I'm going to make sure that I understand these things enough so I can speak to it in a job interview. And if you show up to a job interview and you start talking about CTFD and they're like, what actually got you interested in CTFD? You could be like, well, I started looking around at Battelle, researching your company, really super interested in that. And I found all these CTFD instances for all of these people. Like, who the hell is Matthew? But that shows that you have that initiative and you have that drive that allows you to kind of differentiate yourself from other people. Now, you don't ever want to make it look like you're trying to hack Battelle. That's not the goal. That's not what we're doing here. But you're showing Battelle that you're interested enough in their technology stack. You're interested enough and you're not just going through, yeah, Matthew's giving the interview. That would be awesome. To just kind of jump into it, right? And when they're looking at the resumes, they're going to say, what are the keywords that we're looking for in the resumes? You already know the Battelle technology stack. And you put a bunch of those technologies in there, and they're going to be like, well, we got to know somebody that knows Azure. They don't have that in this job posting. But I guarantee you that the people that are going to be picking up those job applications and looking at it, they're going to be looking for Azure, right? Citrix. They're using Citrix as the VDI environment. Guarantee you they're going to be wanting to know somebody that understands Citrix and how that actually works as well. So you do all of this before you even get into that interview. You're creating your resume. You're tying your resume up to what the job posting is. And if they're not giving you enough information, you're going to go and find that information and you're going to learn these things. Now, once you get the interview, the really hard work starts. Once you get the interview, you're going to dig into the CIS benchmarks. You're going to dig into the CloudFront security configuration stuff. You're going to dig into this wonderful tool called LDAP Toolbox, which is exposed to the entire open internet. I'm just going to throw this out there. This looks kind of janky, but you're going to get familiar with this particular tool. And if they start asking you like, wait, why are you talking about LDAP Toolbox's self-service password reset? You'd be like, well, Battelle uses it. And I saw that Battelle was using it and I decided to do some research to figure out what it was because I got curious about it. Do you have any idea how that makes you look? It makes you look one of two things. Sometimes a mix of the two things. It makes you look crazy. But it also makes you look like you're someone who's engaged and active in the process of trying to get a job. All right. Question is, how do you avoid situations where the interviewer may not react positively looking into them that deeply? If they do talk about it, you just say, hey, any job that I interview with, I want to make sure that I know as much about that as possible. Don't ever go into it and be like, and you can be hacked because I found your CTFD instance and I found your LDAP tool. I'm a god. No, just say that you're interested and you're kind of going through. So if you haven't had practical experience, how would I list the skill set? It would say familiar with. So you would basically go in and you're going to read the documents. You're going to set up like the LDAP tool. Like this is a project that you can download, right? You're going to play with Citrix. You can get like trial versions of CloudFront. You can get trial versions of Citrix, and you can play around with these technologies. But if I am really, really, really looking for a job and I know I have an interview with somebody a week out, I am going to dig into that company and all the technologies I can to make sure I'm ready to just absolutely kick ass and do it. And don't underestimate it. You guys are talking about experience. No one's going to have all of the experience that they're going to have right out of the box, right? And also, especially whenever you're talking about security jobs, it's not like they're going to expect you to administer Citrix. Odds are the security people that you're going to talk to in that job interview, they have probably, if you read the manual, you have more experience in that product than they do. I'm not kidding. I'm not kidding. I'm going to explain why I know that here in just a couple of seconds. So you're going to go through and you're going to read the manuals. You're going to download the VMs. You're going to go through and yeah, maybe you're going to watch things on YouTube, right? But you're going to go ahead and you're going to do all of that and you're going to be able to communicate effectively with it. Now, how the hell do I know what I'm talking about? So I was a member of IANS faculty. So if you look at IANS, let me go IANS. There we go. IANS is kind of like the Avengers, but for computer security. So if you look at like who's the faculty and who's in IANS, like that's Jake Williams. We've got all of these. Aaron's awesome. There's all these people that are just really, really super cool in IANS. And I think I'm still here. Let's go to Strand. Maybe I'm still here. Yeah, there I am. Okay, cool. But if you look at the IANS faculty, it's like the Avengers, and they're basically pulling all of these people together. And I haven't been to an IANS conference in a really, really long time. Now, I've been doing computer security for 25 years now, so a quarter century. And whenever I'm talking to companies, I may not know the individual technologies that they're using inside out and backwards, but I've been doing security and I've been doing IT for a really, really long time. So whenever we set up expert decision support calls, somebody would say, oh, we want to know what we can do with this product to help lock it down. Like they say Citrix. I would pull down the manual and I would read the Citrix manual specifically for hardening Citrix environment. And I can read it really, really fast because a lot of the stuff is just standard. Here's how you add a user. Here's how you delete a user. Here's how you add a user to a group. But then you can be like, here's how you go through and you lock it down to two-factor authentication. Here's how you can disable SMS two-factor authentication. Okay, these are the things that are interesting to me. So whenever I would sit down and do a call with them, I would sit down and I would say, just so you know, I haven't administered this particular product, but there's some really cool security relevant things I want you guys to investigate. And I would just be honest about it. I read the manual and I went through it, and these are the things that you should turn on. Customers loved that, right? Absolutely loved that, right? Another question is, what if they want some specific experience with Palo Alto? Well, I do not have it since it's paid. I do have experience with other tools. Excellent. You're going to read the manual for how to secure a Palo Alto device, right? Like, I know that that's a big, big, big thing out there, but you're going to go through and you're going to like learn as much as you can about Palo Alto, but you're going to say that you're familiar with Palo Alto security policies. And when you get in the interview, you can say, look, I've used Fortinet extensively. I got really interested in Palo Alto about a week ago and started researching the capabilities of Palo Alto. Here's some things I think that are really cool vis-a-vis Fortinet, which I'm used to. And these are some things that are, really cool features that you can enable in Palo Alto, right? I know this seems like it's sketchy. It's not. Like no one is going to fit the perfect role, right? No one is going to fit absolutely everything that they're looking for. Guarantee you that's just not going to happen, right? But if you can couple this with your technology base that you have now and the labs that you stand up in your environment, and then you can kind of apply the things that you have learned in this class and the things that you're learning in a lab environment, and you can apply that to the actual technologies that they're working with. All of a sudden, you're starting to develop a really, really good profile. So let's go ahead and let's go to IT security, see what roles they have. Let's go to SOC. They have all kinds of different, like IT security analyst. So let's see what they have for just entry level jobs. Entry level jobs are a little bit easier. So here's Battelle again. So get this. Oh, that's a senior IT manager. That's the same one. I don't want senior IT manager. I just want straight IT analyst. So here's a basic one. This one's from Maxims. Standard IT consulting job. See, look at this. Why the hell did they put this in? Maximus Technology Consulting Service, in job profile, TCS 057 T3 Band 6. Ugh. All right, so if we're looking at this, awesome. Okay, look at this one. You need to have scripting experience with one or the other, Bash, Python, and/or PowerShell. Awesome. You should be learning a scripting language, and one of those three is going to show up again and again. I would recommend Python. There's a ton of great Python resources out there to get familiar with Python. You can get apps on your phone to teach yourself Python, but any of the big like jobs to really get over that hump, probably 90% of the people that are applying for jobs don't have any scripting or coding language at all. So if you can just go through and you can learn Python and get it to a basic level, then you're already at the point where you're now above 90% of the people that are out there. So get that. Check this out. Experience reviewing findings from more and more scanning tools. Tenable, Burp Suite, Red Hat ACS, Veracode, Contrast, and Aperva. You can download a home version of Tenable, like, like right here. So here you go. Oh, that's Tenable. No, that's the wrong one. You can download a trial version of Tenable, and you can try to set up and run Tenable. So great. Now you can get a vulnerability scanner, right? So you can start working with those different scanning tools. Certification, Security Plus, A Plus, Network Plus, Certified Ethical Hacker. Trust me, Security Plus or A Plus are going to be your easiest certs to get. You're going to need one of those certs. A Plus or Security Plus would be perfectly fine. Even Network Plus. Those would be CEH might be a little bit more of a lift. After you're done with the classes, you should be pretty well set up. Analytical problem solving skills. Don't even know what the hell that means, right? Minimum requirements. Look at this TCF 057 T. That's so weird. Advanced Excel knowledge. Great. Maybe it's time to start taking some Excel classes, right? Familiarity with the White House's zero trust policy. So they got zero trust. Wow, this is crazy. But these are all things that you can research and you can start understanding what these things are. And then you can put into your resume. Like seriously, you all can learn and you can get into, yeah, just need more out. Well, no. Okay. So Python, you can download programs to learn Python on your phone, and you can basically learn Python while you're sitting on the toilet, which is not a really good mental image, but you totally can, right? And if anybody is asking, like you can go through and you can say, you know, how far are you in this? You could say I'm at level 6 or 7, right? So take advantage of this stuff, right? So this one seems attainable. It really, really, really does. But I would still do the same thing to learn their technology profile and what they're running. Senior analyst, business operations analyst, analyst 2, creative financial staffing. All right, what do we got here? This looks like a headhunter. Ugh. I don't know about this one. This one makes me uncomfortable. I'm going to move on from that one. Lead, cyber analyst level 2. Oh, this is Northrop Grumman. Okay. So I know Northrop Grumman really well. Worked there for a long time. So they have a bunch of frameworks, right? And you got to understand the different Scrum methodologies, Kanban, research that. That's not hard. Active TS clearance. A lot of people that are looking for a job, that's not going to go through. But if you see any open jobs at Northrop Grumman, you have a bunch of different tools that are listed here, and that's good. This seems low. Oh, salary range. They got 2 salary ranges. That seems more accurate with that. So, all right. So my point is what you're doing is you're going to go through and you're going to try to profile a company before you send a resume. You're going to look at what are your best options for getting a job. You're going to do a search. Another way that you can look for jobs that's kind of easy is CISSP. CISSP is fairly attainable. A lot of entry-level jobs require CISSP, which is kind of a jackass move, but it is there. So we got like Teradata. They're requiring somebody that's a CISSP, that's a senior, that's an engineer. So, but the point is, you're going to look at the technology profile. You're going to research that technology profile. And before you go into that interview, you're going to be hot to trot with that technology profile. You're going to be able to communicate effectively, like what are the Cloudflare security things that you can put in. You're going to research how do I enable DDoS protection? What are the different security levels that exist? How do I respond to DDoS level things? What is the browser integrity, TLS, SSL configurations that you can have? What are the rules that I have for web application firewalls in Cloudflare on that? These things are important. And honestly, if you go into that interview and you can speak intelligently about it, and you can say, look, this is just something I got into and I started researching it and I started kind of configuring. Cloudflare has a free tier that you can run, and it doesn't cost you anything. And you can actually play with this. Now you can say, yeah, I run Cloudflare at home. Once again, do you have any idea just how different that makes you look, right? Like you're not just somebody that's just reading docs. You're not just somebody that's putting stuff in your resume. You're actually going to try to dig into some of these technologies and set these things up, and you will look completely different than everybody else. All right. So with that, everybody, we're 4 minutes over. I want to say thank you so much. By the way, for those of you that stay until Thursday, we are releasing a security certification as part of this class. So part of the certifications you all can get will be, one of them will be for this class, where it's going to be the ACE-T core certification. It's going to be available, pay what you can. $5 is the minimum. And I have to explain why it's the minimum. When we're doing this, it's my time. It's the time that I offer from BHIS. And I'm willing to eat that cost for Yuri and Ryan and everybody to be here. When we move into MetaCTF, that's Roman's time. And I can't give away Roman's stuff for free. So we're literally going to be giving you guys a $5 like or more security cert that you want to do. It's pay what you can, or as we like to say, pay it forward as well. And you're going to be able to do that for $5 as the minimum for it. So please stick around to check that out. As I said, this is ACE-T and it's MetaCTF. It's not necessarily anti-siphon and myself, but we're going to make sure that you all can walk out of here and you can take a multiple choice test with some cyber range challenges that you're going to have to do a write-up on, that'll be your certification, and we'll talk about all of that. But stick around till Thursday. We're releasing it on Thursday in this class. You guys have got to stick all the way through, and it's going to be available for everyone. Thanks so much, everybody.